Am I on? Hey, everybody hear me? Am I echoing like crazy? Shouldn't be. So far, so good. Still got a couple minutes here. Cool. All right. All right. Well, I'll get started then. It's 7:59. So let's get started. I don't have anything really planned today. It's the Pavlovich workshop, and the reason why it's got that really lame name is because I don't do any one thing in particular, so it's kind of just up in the air as to what we want to do. I will say I would like to start with a character because I don't get to make them very often, so I'm probably going to make a character today. That's cool with you guys. And I guess, you know, some of you may not even know who I am, so I'm going to throw this up here really quick. And let's go through some stuff we can do and what I've done and what I've, not necessarily what I'm good at, but what I'm most comfortable with, and we'll kind of go from there. All right, I'll eat the mic tonight. So basically, I get to do characters every once in a while. We can do environment props, we can do concept modeling, we can do any number of things, just pure environments and stuff like that. I was thinking about starting a character like this, so what I'm probably going to do tonight is we'll start a base character, and then we'll start adding accessories and stuff like that, and kind of go through that whole process. We can also go off on tangents, and I'm really going to look for input on you guys. So if you guys have cool ideas, let me know. As you can see, when it's left up to me, I'll think I have a cool idea, and then I end up making Trapjaw or something like that. Male or female, doesn't really matter. We can kind of decide that as we go. Anything else on here? We can, weapons, vehicles are kind of a fun thing to do, so we might be able to do a little bit of that too. So I'll probably start tonight just with a character, and we'll go from there. So let me go ahead and drop that down. Oh, here's a pro tip for the OBS users out there. For some reason, Chrome has a really hard time, and if you disable, unless you disable hardware acceleration. So Firefox, shout out to them for actually working. So, having said all that, if you don't know who I am, you can also Google my name. It's pretty down here in the corner, Pavlovich. That should be at the bottom of your screen. You can do Pavlovich YouTube, Pavlovich ArtStation, Pavlovich Gumroad. There's a lot of stuff on there that'll kind of get you started as well. But let's start with ZBrush. So I'm going to assume you have an okay understanding of ZBrush. I'm not going to exhaustively go over every little thing that I do in ZBrush. I'm going to try to explain as much as I can. But definitely holler out if you have a question or if you see me do something that looks interesting. I can definitely go over that, or we can go off on little tangents and little side trips and kind of figure some stuff out as far as techniques or menu items and stuff like that. So if I'm going to start a character, I'm probably, being the character artist that I am, I'm going to hit the comma key, and I'm going to go over here to the tool menu, and I'm just going to grab Nick Z's Human Mesh, Nick Zuccarello. I used to work with this guy at EA Tiburon in Orlando, so shout out to Nick Zuccarello. So I would probably start here, just because the landmarks are in place, everything's kind of set up for me to start sculpting, and I could easily turn this into a male or a female or a creature if I wanted to. But that wouldn't make for much of a demo, so I'm going to skip that one for now. That's not to say we won't try that later on. Another thing I would probably do is use Z-spheres. So just do a little quick Z-sphere demo here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to change my material. You're going to see I customize my menu a bit, move some stuff around, and as I kind of use those things, I'll talk about it as they come up. But I threw some stuff down here, and that's just going up here to Preferences, Config, turning on Enable Customize, and then you can Control-Alt-Drag anything that you use down here. And if you don't like it, you can just drag it off there just like that. And you know what? I haven't used Soft Clay in a long time. I put that there like 3 years ago and haven't been back, so I'll just go ahead and get rid of that. Of course, when you're done, you're going to want to turn off Enable Customize and get you back to where you started. It also might be a good idea to go Preferences, Store Config, and that way every time you load ZBrush up, it'll remember all that stuff you just did, just in case you crash. If you do close ZBrush, it'll store your config for you, I believe. So anyway, we have a Z-sphere here. If I hit X, that's going to toggle on transform across the X-axis. So if I hit that, you're going to see what it's doing there. And with this thing, across the X-axis here, there we go. I can go ahead and just drag out Z-spheres. I can hit W to go into move. I can hit Q to go back into draw. And we can just start drawing Z-spheres here. So let's call that, you know what, I'm going to hit Alt and just delete those. So I can go from the top here. You're going to see when my cursors come together, it'll just drag out a Z-sphere here and a Z-sphere here. So we can do like hips and the middle of the body and shoulders, and then drag out, shoulders up here. And then if you hold down Shift, it'll snap it to the original, your parent Z-sphere, I should say. So you can kind of go through here and very quickly start blocking out a humanoid shape. Now, I'm not actually going to do this either. I'm just kind of doing a quick demonstration of the 9 million ways you can do something in ZBrush, which is a good thing. It can kind of be overwhelming, especially if you're new to 3D in general or just new to ZBrush. But it's also the power of ZBrush. It's not just a few things. You have to make a base mesh this way. No, you can make a base mesh a million different ways. I'm going to show you like 5 really quickly, and then we'll kind of settle in on one. So, okay, so we got a human here. Let's go ahead and give it a neck and a head. And then if I wanted to start sculpting on this thing, what I could do is just go hit A, the adaptive skin here. If you go to your adaptive skin menu, you're going to get a preview. It's got a density of 2. So if you drop that down, here's the lowest density. So you can kind of change that on the fly. And if you like this, just go ahead and make adaptive skin. You've got a Z-sphere here, and then you've got a skin Z-sphere, and you can immediately just start sculpting away. Now you're going to, of course, want to hit X symmetry if you want to sculpt in symmetry, and you're off to the races. Now, because we had a density of 2, you're going to see we do have 2 subdivisions over here, so keep that in mind. Another thing we can do, I'm going to go back to our Z-sphere here and hit A to go out of adaptive skin. And you can go down here to Z-sketch. And if you turn on Edit Sketch, you can actually go in here. It changes your brush to a, oops, let's drop my brush size way down. It'll change your stroke to a sketch. And you can go in here and smooth, and it's a Z-sphere sketch. And you can do really cool, zany things with this kind of stuff. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but if you want to, hit the comma key and go up here to Tools. And you're going to see, for example, here's a sketch bug in here. So here's somebody who Z-sketched a bug, and of course you can use Z-sketch to kind of go across here. Now I've hit A on this thing. It's not going to give me an adaptive skin. It's going to give me a unified skin. So you're going to see, here's the preview. If I hit A, it's going to toggle that on and off. And your resolution for this is going to be right here. So if you're ready to start sculpting on this thing, you can hit Make Unified Skin, go start sculpting on it. Of course, you don't even need, if you're doing base mesh stuff, you don't even need an armature like we had. All you need to do is just turn on Edit Sketch, and immediately, let's hit X. You can just start drawing. Here's a human, put some hips, body, shoulders, head. Let's here's neck, head. There we go. And now we've got an adaptive skin preview for like that. And again, because ZBrush and with Dynamesh, of course, it's so fluid and just like a blob of clay that it, well, I mean, let's do that. So you can actually start with a blob of clay. Let's take a cylinder. It doesn't matter which primitive you use. I'm going to hit Make Polymesh 3D. And I'm going into my custom menu now. I'm going to try to not do that tonight too much. So we're going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and you're going to see Dynamesh in here. You can just turn that on. We have a Dynamesh resolution. I'm going to hit X. And with Dynamesh, we can go in here with the Move brush. And if you want to, or we can mask and then transpose, mask, transpose. You can go into Insert Mesh brushes, and in fact, if you go to BI, so hit the B key to launch your brush menu, hit I to go to your Insert Mesh brushes, go to Insert Mesh body parts, and if you hit M, as in Michael Pavlovich, you're going to see there's a whole slew of body parts in here. So how easy is that? If I want arms, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do Cylinder Man. We'll put some arms on him. and we'll rotate that out. BI, we'll actually we'll hit M since we already got that selected. We'll go ahead and do a male head here. Drop that in on the top. Perfect. Work of art. And because it's Dynamesh, I can just control drag, Dynamesh this. I'm going to Dynamesh this at a slightly lower resolution. And now we can start sculpting. While you're sculpting, I don't mind this kind of cursor flopping around while I'm doing like Z-modeler hard edge type stuff, which we'll get to. I'm not a big fan of it while I'm sculpting, so what I'm going to do is go up here to Preferences, Edit. I'm going to turn off Align Cursor to Surface, and that way it doesn't affect the functionality of the cursor or anything or your brush, but it'll keep it from kind of flopping around. And I've been using ZBrush since a long time ago, and I'm just kind of used to not seeing it move around, so I usually tend to just turn that off. Anyway, we have an awesome human being right there. For demonstration purposes, and there's even more ways to start a base mesh for your human being, but a cool one I like to do just for kind of practice and fun is I'm going to go to the comma key, tool, and we're going to take this Ryan Kingsline skeleton in here, and it's going to throw this tool over here. You're going to see that little 89. That means there's 89 subtools here. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and now we've got kind of a character to work with. All the muscles are in here. If I alt tap, right now when I alt tap it, usually when you have a subtool selected, it's a little bit brighter than the surrounding subtools. It's not doing that because we have the poly paint colorize turned on. So what I'm going to do is hold down shift and tap that paintbrush, and that'll turn colorize off for all my subtools. If you did have poly paints, it wouldn't get rid of it. It's just toggling visibility. If you want to toggle the visibility on for all of them, hold down shift, hit that paintbrush, it'll toggle it all back. So anyway, and he's got these all labeled very nicely. So great reference in here for just kind of even some surface anatomy with fat deposits and musculature and all that stuff. For this demo, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go all the way up here to the skeleton, which is the top subtool, and I'm going to go to delete other under the subtool menu, and we're just going to start with the skeleton. If you want to make modifications to your skeleton, if you want to go in here, hit the X key, which it looks like it already does have transform turned on for symmetry there. So let's go ahead and turn that off. So if you want to go ahead and broaden the shoulders out, female skulls tend to have, and we're going to do a little bit of anatomy. Hope you guys don't mind. It keeps me refreshed. I'm not a character artist anymore. I'm a principal artist, but I tend towards the characters, weapons, vehicle side. But even as a senior character artist, you would be surprised how often we don't actually make a characters and how quickly anatomy can kind of go by the wayside, because realistically, when I was on DC Universe Online, for example, we made 10,000 characters, but guess how many times I had to think about anatomy? Probably around 0, because the leads and the anatomy guys love to hoard those things because it's fun to do, and once it's done, we have a base mesh, and then we're done doing it. It's not like we're sculpting a character all 10,000 times with different equipment. We're sculpting the character once, and then we're doing 10,000 pieces of equipment. So I got really good at equipment. I got really not that good at anatomy. So I do teach at Gemini, and that's kind of kept me, somewhat fresher. So we're going to we'll start there, and we'll kind of just work our way up. So what's the easiest way to get some muscles on this thing? So let's kind of just start building our character. There's a lot of different ways to do that. One of those is with the curve brushes. So if I go to B, C, and then we'll do curve tube. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the stroke menu and just dock this to the side. And let's do, if you hold down shift, it'll keep all these things open. And let's do as line. So you can actually go through here. Let's say we want to do a sternomastoid or a sternocleidomastoid. So it's going to go from your back here to your clavicle up here. Let's go ahead and make my brush size smaller, and we can kind of stick it from here to here. I have a custom brush, but you know what? Let's make a brush real quick. Let's make a muscle brush. That'll be a little bit, a little more customized. So what I'm going to do is, drag out any primitive, doesn't matter. Go into edit mode, make a polymesh 3D. Go to your initialize menu, hit Q cube. Go into polyframe here, and we'll have a Q cube here. And I'm just going to use transpose, and we're going to stretch this thing out. And let's go ahead and we're going to make basically what we're going to do is make an insert curve brush that's going to be fat in the middle, so it'll kind of look like a muscle belly with two heads on the either end. So let's go ahead and I'm going to roll over. I'm going to go into my Z modeler brush. That's BZM. And ZBrush Core doesn't include ZBrush, I don't think. You would think I would know because I just did a ZBrush Core thing on my YouTube channel for free. It's like 50 videos. Go watch it if you want to get up and rolling on that. Or, I mean, go to the Pixelogic website, of course. But, yeah. I don't think ZBrush is in there. But if I hover over an edge here, I can go to spacebar, insert single edge loop. If I hold down Alt, it'll get rid of that. And then I can just kind of divide this thing up by using multiple edge loops. We can kind of divide this thing up like so. I kind of want to make this 3 even parts, so let's see if we can't do that. So we got 1, 2, 3. So what I mean by that is if I hit Control W, that's going to do under polygroups, that's basically performing a group mask clear mask. So if I have something masked on here and I hit Control W, maybe it's not masked enough. There we go. It'll polygroup what's masked and then clear the mask. If you have nothing masked, it'll just polygroup whatever's visible on the screen. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate this top part here just by going into Select Rectangle, holding down Control Shift. And we'll grab that top piece here, hit Control W, and we'll grab this bottom piece here, hit Control W. There we go. So now we have 3 even polygroups, and that'll be important later. I'm also going to kind of shrink this down like so. And if we go ahead and do B to open our brush menu, create insert mesh brush, new, now we have an insert mesh brush. Not really what we wanted. So I'm going to go over here to my stroke menu. If you don't have that, just drag stroke right over here. And our curve functions right here. We have curve. I'm going to turn on curve mode, which will allow us to do this type of thing. So we have an anchor point, an end point, and then a repeating middle. It's basically just repeating this middle part here, like so. You're going to see they're not welded, so let's go ahead and turn on weld points here. Where is that at? I think that might be under brush, modifiers. There it is, weld points. So now if I touch this, it'll update that, and you can see my points are welded. If I turn on stretch and up my curve res, that'll kind of allow me a little bit more flexibility in that curve. And also I'm making my brush size bigger and smaller. So you can kind of see how that affects the brush. Now, of course, once you've dragged out your curve, you can make your brush size bigger and retap it, or even cooler, hit BI, and let's take one of these insert curve brushes. Let's go to Army Curve, hit M, and anything that's a curve brush, whether it's tank tread, reinforced hose, you can tap a curve and it'll go ahead and automatically update that curve to whatever that insert brush is. So I'm going to hit M, go to timing chain, make my brush bigger, and now we have a timing chain. So very, very flexible. So there's that. Let's go ahead and undo all that. So we have that functionality. One more change I want to make to this brush that we're making is I'm going to go over here to, I'm going to hit B, grab my insert mesh brush that I made. And we're going to do, up here on stroke, you're going to see intensity and size here. If I go to the curve fall off and start dragging this out, you're going to see it goes from thin to thick. That's being controlled by this curve. So if I drag this up, this little point here, that'll make it thick to thick. If I drag both of these down and then drag this middle part up, it'll go from thin to thick to thin. So we can kind of start getting like a muscle type brush going here. There we go. So it's kind of a flat muscle type brush. If I want to make this thicker, I can capture a thicker brush, or what I can also do on the fly is go down here to brush, and you're going to see there's a strength multiplier. I can make it thinner by dropping that Z intensity down. So now it's like paper thin, or I can make Z intensity 100, and that'll kind of fatten it up a little bit. If I really want to over crank how wide or thick it is, I can go to the strength multiplier and just start cranking that number up. And then now as I drag it out, it'll start making it more square. So you can kind of, you don't have to capture exactly the width or the depth that you want. You can kind of adjust that as needed. So I think we're pretty close. Oh, another thing we want to do is, just because I want to snap it to an origin and an insertion point, let's go ahead and turn on as line. So now I can just drag out a straight line and it'll just be like a little snappy thing. The other cool thing you're going to want to do is save this brush, because you don't want to do this every time you open up ZBrush. So let's go ahead and undo that. And just for a cool icon, I'm going to turn off as line real quick. And I'm just going to make a bunch of like little crazy zany things. And you're going to see as I'm stopping, as I'm done drawing my line, I tap off away from the curved line, and that's basically deleting the curve, which if you don't want to do it like that, all you got to do is go over here to curve and hit the delete key. It'll delete the curve, or drag it on, smooth it out, and then just tap away from the curve and it'll go ahead and do that. One thing I forgot to mention is we were changing our brush size out here. You see how the brush is red out here? You can make it smaller and tap, make it bigger and tap. Notice I'm moving away from the curve. As I go over the curve, it goes from a red to a blue. When it's blue, that means that's adjusting just kind of the width or the area of effect that as I'm grabbing this curve. So if it's blue and I make it smaller, I'm just tapping S to make it smaller, I'm sorry. It'll just adjust little small areas of the curve. If I tap S and make the blue really big, it'll affect really broad areas of the curve. So that's all that's doing there. So we got all that. I'm making a mess, but it's for a good reason. I'm gonna go ahead and position this here, and we're gonna go to brush, and we're gonna hold down Alt and tap select icon. That's gonna capture my document into a cool little icon. So now I have a brush that's like a muscle brush. And actually, you know what? Let's turn on as line before we save it. So now it's going to act like this. And let's turn off snap so it doesn't snap to underlying surfaces. And bend, I guess that doesn't really matter. We'll keep that on. So now what I'm going to do, now that all the settings are where I want it, I'm going to go to brush, save as. And if we go over here to C, program files, Pixelogic ZBrush 4R7, there's two places you can save this that make sense. One is ZBrushes. So in here, I'm going to have a bunch of folders. So I'm going to go into IMM, and we'll call this muscles. You could also save it in ZBrush 4R7 Z Startup and Brush Presets. If you put it in here, every time ZBrush starts up, it'll load that brush. If you were going to say start up ZBrush, or want to do this, start up ZBrush and assign a hotkey to something, you're definitely going to want to put it in here, and you're going to see I do have some in here, and we'll talk about them when we get there. But yeah, we'll talk about these brushes that I have in here when we get there. But yeah, save it in here, and then every time you start up ZBrush and you open up your B brush menu, it'll show up here. You're going to see I have move, for example, a brush called Move Acu. That's basically the move brush with Acu turned on. I use it all the time, so I went ahead and saved a version of it in my startup, and then I assigned a hotkey to it. So if I hover over this, you're going to see I'm pointing. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you're going to see Alt-V is assigned to this. So every time I start up ZBrush, I have Move Acu, start up with me, I assign a hotkey, and then I'm good to go. Every time. So anyway, long story real short now. Sorry, we have a muscle brush. So I'm going to go to, oh boy, where did we end up? We got a lot of stuff in here. There's our skeleton. So anyway, we have a muscle brush in here. So if I touch here, oops, we got to select it, hit B, grab your muscles here to here. We can go ahead, and now we have a cool muscle brush. If we tap off, that'll go ahead and create a new one if we want to. Since this is actually attaches to our, I'm going to go to my move brush, our sternum, which is right here, and it also attaches to our clavicle. We can just do this here, like so, tap off. If we control drag, that'll unmask everything. If I want to just isolate these muscles by themselves, I'm going to do control shift, and I do this all the time, more so than actually tapping. I'll do control shift and just grab a couple pieces of those. Control shift A, which is visibility grow. There it is, visibility grow all. You're going to see that's control shift A. Super useful, highly recommended. Because I've done that, I'm going to go into my subtool here, because I've now made that visible. If I hold down Control Shift and drag, that'll invert my selection. So now it's like in the underworld. It's still there. If I Control Shift tap, it'll bring it back. But if I want to now, I can go to Subtool, Split. I can do Split Hidden, and that'll go ahead and pop that out into its own subtool. Because it's so easy, I'm actually going to go over here. I'm going to turn on, I'm not going to go there yet. Geometry, Dynamesh. I'm going to turn off Project, turn off Blur, and hit Dynamesh. That resolution's a little bit low, so I'm going to undo that, crank that up just a bit, then hit Dynamesh. I'm going to go in here with my inflate brush. I'm going to inflate these just a bit. And that is one way to put on muscles. Now, that's fun, and you can certainly do that for all your muscles if you'd like. I found it a little bit tedious, so we're going to kind of do a mix of a bunch of different things. And actually, the sternomastoid, if I remember correctly, is a little bit more of a flat muscle, so what I'm going to do is go in here with my H-polish brush. I'm going to solo here. I'm going to actually take my trim dynamic. There we go. And kind of flatten that down. And if we want to, we can actually drag a transpose line and just rotate these and kind of fit those right in there. And then we can go in here and smooth these up. One thing I do use a lot is if I hold down Shift, you're going to see I have the smooth, regular old smooth brush. If you go, I'm going to turn off stroke here. I'm going to go to brush, and under the smooth brush modifiers, you're going to see there's a weighted smooth mode down here. If you hover over that, you're going to see there's a 0 is just standard, which is what it's set at by default. 1 is stronger, and there's a whole bunch of different types of smooth brush options in there. If you hit the comma key on a brush, and we're going to go to, where are we at? QR smooth. All of those weighted smooth modes are actually saved as their own brushes in here. So if I double click, for example, the one I use all the time, which is smooth. I don't actually go in here all the time, as you can tell. There it is. Smooth stronger. It's going to say, okay, every time you hit this Shift key from now on, it's going to use smooth stronger. So I'm going to hit OK. And what that allows me to do is if I hold down Shift, you're going to see smooth stronger selected. That'll really just smooth the heck out of all your meshes. Now, if you're working at a high resolution mesh, this is going to be really important. But for me, what it does is it allows me a little bit more flexibility. So let's say, I'm going to drop this resolution down just a little bit. Let's say I use smooth stronger and it's like, whoa, way too strong. Instead of switching back to smooth, I'm going to hold down Shift and just drop my Z intensity down. So that gives me just a broader range of smoothing to do, as opposed to kind of capping out at smooth and then having to go grab smooth stronger. So actually, when I start up ZBrush, I have smooth stronger loaded right down here. So I just usually end up just turning on smooth stronger right off the bat. So anyway, okay, we've talked a lot and we've got one tiny muscle in there. Let's speed this up a little bit, and that's the next thing we want to do. Another thing we can do, let's do this one. So I want to keep the skeleton. That's going to be our landmark. So what I'm going to do is actually go down here and duplicate the skeleton off. I'm going to select my duplicate, and I'm going to turn this into a Dynamesh as well. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is inflate the skeleton just a bit. We're going to kind of fatten it up. And then I'm going to go in here, turn up my resolution just a tad, turn off blur and project, and hit Dynamesh. And you're going to see I was actually in my custom menu. I go in here by default all the time. When I do, I'll try and holler out where they are over here if I'm too lazy to actually go over here. But for now, it's Geometry, Dynamesh. That's where all those options were. So now I can go in here to inflate. I can just inflate this stuff up and control drag. You can go to Smooth Stronger, crank that intensity up. And now we're off to the races. Oh, we increased the inflate intensity, and the smooth stronger. Oops, sorry about that. So now we can inflate, Dynamesh, and that'll kind of close up those holes. So that's one way to kind of get some stuff going with your skeleton here. We are still going to have some problems, so let's go ahead and fill some of these holes in here. Instead of going through here and inflating the heck out of this ribcage and stuff, what we can do is use insert brushes. So I'm going to go to B, I, insert sphere, drag that out, and we're just going to take that. You're going to see when we insert a sphere, it's auto masked, which means everything is masked except for what we just inserted. So if I go here, I'm gonna hold down Shift and turn off poly paint. just to make it clearer for you guys what's actually being selected, and for me, honestly. And we'll just kind of fill up this rib cage here all the way up to the neck, and I can go in here and inflate, drag it out, and now we're kind of filling this thing up. And let's do it one more time. BI sphere, and you don't have to use a sphere, you can use a cube or whatever you want, but for the body it seems like this is not too big, not too bad of a deal here. There we go. So we can kind of start closing this stuff up. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and just drop one right into the middle here. Now, while I'm making the character here, I'm going to go ahead and make this S curve here. You know, we got the back here, and then the curve of the belly, and then the curve of the butt, and then the curve of the legs. You kind of have these overlapping S curves. You know, I kind of want to, I want to make sure that we're paying attention to that while we're doing the anatomy. That's just as important, if not more important, really. Because it doesn't matter how accurate your origins and insertions are, if you have a really awkward, disproportionate character, you're not really going to be selling anybody on your character. So, now we've got this thing kind of filled out a little bit. Let's go ahead and start making some more muscles. We'll start at the top and work our way down. I'm going to go ahead and smooth this down a bit so that the skull is just showing here. Because I do want to keep those landmarks. So on your face, your cheekbones and obviously your cranium and your chin, those are all very, very close to the surface here. So I'm going to go ahead, let's use a clay brush and kind of start digging in here. There we go. Cool. Okay, so since we're moving our way down, let's go ahead and start with the shoulder girdle here. Actually, how's everybody doing? So far, so good? If we do have questions, I don't know how to kind of wrangle that. Yeah, you can holler them out if you see them. My wife's home, so thank you. Dog's sleeping. So you holler those out at me and I can address them as needed. So anyway, got my body here. And I'm going to go into my, actually, you know what? Hold on just a second. Let me turn this off real quick. Shoot. There we go. Oh, sorry. Okay, so a lot of people like using clay buildup while they're doing muscles, and it is good. It's a good way to kind of get stuff building up. I actually prefer doing, and I do use clay buildup, but more for like hard edge stuff. I'm going to go to my clay brush, and the clay brush is nice as well. It's a little bit soft for kind of blocking out meshes. So what I'm going to do is kind of do a happy medium. It's not going to be the clay buildup. It's not going to be the clay brush. It's going to be the clay brush with an alpha in it. So we're going to grab alpha 06, and this will kind of be a happy medium between the two. It's not what I consider a little bit too in your face. Clay buildup can kind of be a little bit overpowering, but it's not as soft as a clay brush. And we can go ahead and we can crank that intensity up just a tad. So anyway, underneath here, we've got our sternum somewhere. There it is, buried in there. Looks like I was a little overzealous with my inflation there. Just gotta knock that down a little bit. So we've got our sternum in here. And we've got our collarbone. It's like I'm going for an archaeological dig here. And we've got the spine of the scapula here. And I don't have the names all that memorized. I mean, I got enough of them memorized. But I usually have my book, just like any teacher. I got my little cheat sheets in my books available to me. When I'm blocking out teeth, I would definitely start with... let me show you. Let's go. I have a custom little menu here we can talk about in a second, but I would start out with like a cylinder. Let's go ahead and split that off. And just really quickly, if I'm just doing like a really quick block out, I actually did a tactical frog for my channel, on my Twitch channel, where I did teeth like this. And basically, here's my teeth. I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly do like a clip circle. Oops, hold down Alt, don't let that cross over. And whoops, let's go ahead and do a clip curve, get these things back. So if I'm just doing like a quick teeth block out, let's go ahead and raise the resolution a bit. Standard brush, crank that intensity up. There we go. Actually, my brush is acting a little bit weird. I'm going to go to brush and just hit reset all brushes. There we go. So now I can just start carving in like where my teeth are going to go here. And if these need to be a little bit wider, I can go back here to get those back teeth, those big fat back teeth. Q. There we go. Inflate. That's what I'm looking for. So we can kind of fatten these up, and then in here I can go to H polish and start polishing this stuff back, moving these things out in the right shape here. So now I'm going to go in here to H polish, and you know the front teeth are going to be thinner, so I'm going to kind of thin those out a bit. And you're going to see, because this mesh is thin, I'm, you know, let's say I got the clay brush here and I'm like clay brushing away like this, and I'm like, oh, clay brush is working great. And then I turn it around, I'm like, oh, gross, it's got a really thin mesh. Make sure for the brushes you want to, so we've got our brush menu over here. I'm going to go down here to auto masking, and for H polish, for example, I'm going to turn on backface, and for clay brush, I'm going to turn on backface as well. So now when I'm using the clay brush on this side, it doesn't go through the other side. So if you're doing capes, anything thin where your brush diameter is bigger than the mesh, definitely turn that on. So we'll go ahead and polish this down. Actually, let's use trim dynamic first, and we'll turn on backface masking for trim. So we'll go thin to thick, and then we've got our teeth here. And because this is just a block out mesh, I can really quickly just go in here and kind of dig the teeth in. And then if I want to, I can go in here with my clay brush or masking or any number of things. Let's go ahead and build up some gums here. And then I'm going to go in here with the Damien standard. That's the Dam standard brush. So BD Dam standard, or Damien standard if you're a refined gentleman like I am. And we can kind of carve these teeth in. Now, teeth are a little bit curved, so I'm going to go ahead and just use clay brush to kind of curve these teeth out. And then standard brush, or Damien standard, like so. And control drag if I want to keep dynameshing. If I want to, and, you know, sculpt the back of the teeth as well. If I want to make these a little bit nice, let's crank the resolution up a little bit more. I'm just going to go through here with my Damien standard again and just kind of pop these teeth out like so. And then I'm going to go back in with my pinch brush, BP something. I don't know what I have as a hotkey assigned. There we go. So now I've got pinch brush here. We've got our gums. Now, of course, our gums are probably going to overlap a little bit more. You can go in here and mask your teeth, invert that mask if you want to, and kind of just play with those together. And just really quickly, I'm also going to go to the side, change from mask to mask lasso, grab the tops of these, transpose. There we go. Now, above the tooth, I don't need to pull up reference for this, so kind of run your tongue over your teeth. You can kind of feel it. Above the teeth is going to be a bulge, and between the teeth is going to be kind of a divot. You can kind of start sculpting gums a little bit better. Anyway, for block out teeth, this is fine. If I'm viewing it from here, and you can go in here, let's go ahead, and I'm going to use snake hook down here. Wonky vampire. There we go. So vampire teeth. These are good enough for block out. However, if you want to, if your end goal is just to make a quick pair of teeth that you're only going to see from this distance with a couple material IDs in game, then by all means you're done. Call it a day. Usually though, I'll throw these in a mouth just to make sure I got some teeth to work with that are kind of easy. But then at the end of the day, I am going to create individual teeth, just like this skeleton here. Well, the skeleton we're using is good enough. Each of these teeth is actually individual. If I go through here and do Control Shift Drag, Control Shift A, you're going to see a bunch of teeth in there. Oh, incidentally, you can also go through here and do, I'm going to do an auto groups. I'm sorry, you guys, it'll be polygroups, auto groups in here. And I'm also going to do, because now it's like, okay, this clavicle's white, this clavicle's pink. If I want to just go ahead and mirror this across the x-axis, mirror and weld, that's under geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld. You can do just a mirror and weld. Let's find it. Let's find it this time. Modify topology, mirror and weld. The reason I use this custom menu, and if you want this custom menu, it's for free on my Gumroad. Just go to Pavlovich Gumroad, and I got instructions on how to install it. I'm not saying it's the world's best. This is just something I threw together, and honestly, it needs to be cleaned out. It's not great. But if you just want to look at it, it's there for you to check out. But basically, simple things like, for example, let's say on this side, I do something, and I want to mirror it, or let's say this side I'm doing something like, oh, I forgot to hit mirror across the x-axis. I want this shoulder to be higher. In order for me to go ahead and mirror and weld that, I'm going to have to go to deformation, mirror across the x-axis, and then, well, if I don't do that first, I'm going to go to geometry, mirror and weld across the x, and it's going to go, oh, no, I want high shoulders on both sides. So then you got to go mirror, because it goes negative x axes. So if I turn on my floor here, x, y, and z, you're going to see we have a, just like in math class, you've got a y-axis, an x-axis, and then a z-axis that pokes straight out. This is negative x, this is positive x. It's mirroring negative to positive. So in order to get this to mirror correctly, I've got to mirror it first, and then mirror and weld across the x. Instead of doing that, and I'm getting old, and my brain can't quite keep up, I like to take these two separate things and throw them right here next to each other in my custom menu. And you can see as I hover over them, it highlights them over there in the menu. So makes my life easier. Makes it a little bit harder on people watching. If you're new to ZBrush, I don't want to go too fast or too far, but I also want to kind of get stuff done. So again, I'll call it out when I do it. But anyways, mirror and weld, and now we have a polygroup on both sides. So now when I select the clavicles, we get both of them. So anyway, teeth were separate. Wow, I'm really good at tangents. If we wanted, let's say we wanted to polygroup the upper and lower teeth really quickly. I'm going to grab them all, Control-Shift-A, Control-Shift-Tap these to get rid of them. There we go. So now we've got the teeth here. Let's go ahead and hit Control-W, and then I'm going to grab the top teeth here, Control-Shift-A, Control-W, and now we've got polygrouped upper teeth, lower teeth. Occasionally when you polygroup, they'll be very similar colors. You can just hit Control-W and make that something different. Anyway, but I digress. Okay, solo mode. But anyway, yeah, so at this point, I would have my gums. I would, you could do BI. You know what? I'm just going to do a custom menu. You can insert cubes onto this thing and make a nice tooth, and then make a nice pair of, and just replace these teeth with really nice model teeth. You know what? When we get further into the character, we'll definitely do that. It'll be fun. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Okay, so clay brush, we're going to put in an alpha here, and we're going to keep sculpting. So we got a sternum here, we got a clavicle here. So what's attached to all this stuff in here? Well, your pectoralis major is going to be stuck in here. Your pectoralis minor is actually going to be tucked in here as well. If you've seen that drawing that Leonardo did of that old man, and he's got the really thin pectoralis major muscle, and then the minor is kind of webbed in there too. You will see it if it's kind of like an emaciated, very thin-skinned person, if you've had to look at that reference, but usually you won't see too much of that. So we'll go ahead and just sculpt in our pectoralis major, and that's going to connect to your sternum, to your clavicle. It's going to wrap around down in here into your armpit, like so. Good enough. We got a deltoid over here, so let's go ahead and just do the shoulder girdle. So what makes up the shoulder girdle? If I go into transparency mode here, and I turn off ghost, you're going to see we have a clavicle, we have a head of a humerus, and we have an acromion process coming off the spine of the scapula. All through here is that shoulder girdle area. So what's attached to all that stuff is, number 2 is your deltoid. that's actually going to overlap all of this stuff. So what I'm going to do in this case is BI insert sphere. And I'm going to go ahead and just drop a sphere in here. And we'll just kind of move this around. So the deltoid is going to go around here like this. And it's actually going to go over the head of your humerus, and it's usually bulges down around here. You'll see a lot of superheroes, and I used to work with a guy at Tiburon who had shoulders like this, just like those bowling ball shoulders. Usually it just goes around the head of the humerus like this and kind of bulges down here, and then it attaches to the clavicle here, and then it goes all the way around and attaches to the spine of the scapula. Halfway down the humerus, there's a little notch. That is where the deltoids go. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier on is another cool thing about starting with this skeleton is you don't have to worry about proportions. It's already built in. I have, if I go into my tools here, I have an 8 heads plane that I made. It's basically just a texture applied to this plane here. So what I can do is I can throw this over here to the side. Put in my safe action, doesn't matter. Hit go out of edit mode, and then I can drag out any character over here. And I can just go ahead and just have a little 8 heads high thing to evaluate against. I also do the exact same thing for like color swatches. If I want to sample colors, all I do is throw that over there, go out of edit mode, and then I can just hit the C key, and that's going to sample colors from over here. So FYI, if that's interesting to you. We might do a little bit of that when we get to material IDs, if you need very specific sampled colors, that is. So anyway, we've got a deltoid here. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this off. One thing you can do is go to split, unmask points, and now you've got your deltoids in their own. Now, if I go down here, you're gonna see that the deltoids actually have Dynamesh already turned on, and that's actually a really cool feature. I use it all the time. So I'll have a Dynamesh that I'm using, and then I'll insert something on it, break it off, and then I'll Dynamesh that. It's really useful because it inherits those Dynamesh properties. So all I got to do is hit Control Drag and then just start Dynameshing with this thing. I don't have to go and reset my Dynamesh settings every single time. So very useful feature. So anyway, we got our deltoids here. Let's work our way around to the back. And we got a trapezius back here somewhere, I think I can just kind of sculpt that in. So the trapezius, you're going to see a little bump on the back of the head here. That's your occipital protuberance. And we're just going to give ourselves a little bit of meat back here. And that's going to kind of cascade down here and just follow the spine of the scapula down. And then go down here to about the middle of your back. It's also going to go around your C7 here. So if I go into transparent mode, if you lean your head down and you kind of feel the back of your neck, there's going to be a knob. That is the base of your neck here. Wow, I'm really having to dig in there to find it. Get in there. Okay. You know what? Let's not fight it. Let's brush that thing in there. So your trapezius is going to go around that spot there, and then halfway down your back, and then up your neck. And that's a little thin. Let's go ahead and thicken that up a bit. Now, obviously, if you've got, a football player, he's going to have traps like this. Females tend to have, and again, I'm speaking purely in generalities here, a little bit lower. That kind of lengthens the neck just for the character design purposes. The illusion of a longer neck is lower traps. So we can go ahead and Dynamesh that. Like so. What else are we missing here? In here, oh boy, we have infraspinatus, teres major, and teres minor. There's some other muscles in there, but they're not really that superficial. And honestly, I don't even remember which ones they are. But you know what might be cool for you guys? Let me load up this real quick. Let me internet up. There we go. I use a little place called zygotebody.com. I could also go to the Ryan Kingsline muscle thing, and I'm sure he has them all labeled out too. But this is another really good resource. Maximize this. So basically, you can choose a male or female model in here, and it's not great for surface anatomy, obviously. But what you can do is you can go through here. I'm going to take off the skin, the ligaments, the organs, the heart, the nervous system, and I'm just left with muscles and bones. So if I want to look in here, I can go, okay, let's see what all these muscles are. So I'm going to grab all 3 of these, and you're going to see it starts naming them and highlighting them. So that's the teres major, or the teres minor infraspinatus. And if I hold down shift, there's the teres minor. And it also is attached to the scapula. Now the scapula is kind of hard to dig out of there. So what I'm going to do is, while these are selected, I'm going to drop the muscles out of view. And now we see the muscles and the bones and where they insert and connect. If I hold down shift and tap, you're going to see the scapula, the humerus, and the clavicle, let's say. So now with all those selected, I'm going to take the bones and make them even more transparent. And now I can go all the way in and around the body and kind of see exactly where these things attach. Super good reference for internal anatomy. I kind of go back and forth on what's more important, internal anatomy or external anatomy. I guess they're both. I can't say what's more important or not. I can say I wish I had studied, or it was more liable to be studied when I was in college, the external anatomy, because it's super duper important. And honestly, I don't think I'm that strong in it. I tend to use a lot of reference for figuring out what the body is supposed to look like on the outside with skin and fat. The muscles and the bones is one thing, and it's definitely good to know the landmarks and where that stuff goes and how things work inside the body. But, surface anatomy is also super important. So anyway, I thought that was a cool resource. So anyways, so we have the teres minor, teres major, and infraspinatus. So cool. Let's go ahead and drop that down. Go back to ZBrush here. And now I got to drop that out. Okay. So I'm going to go into solo mode here, and we'll just kind of rough in these things here. Perfect. Now, what else we got? We got our sternomastoid here. I'm going to kind of pull this back a bit. Now, underneath here, underneath your jaw here, if we take the head anatomy, you divide the head from the side view from here to here, it's pretty much square. And if you take this eye line straight back, goes from the occipital protuberance to the eye line, and then you got your brow line, your nose line. So it fits within a nice square here. There's your auditory meatus, and then you got your jaw here. Underneath all of this is really important stuff. So what I'm going to do is go to BI, insert sphere. And by important, I mean if you don't have it, your head's going to look kind of weird. You're kind of missing some stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop in some filler. Like so. Control drag again, smooth, and then just go into my clay brush here, and we got a little hole in there. I'm going to inflate that. There we go.
How do you deal with certain parts that fit out too much when you're blocking?
That fit out?
Thin out.
Inflate. So a lot of the time I will, and I do that a lot, I will, come on, Alt, tap. There we go. If I, since this thing is so low, I'll tend to like thin these things too far out. And in fact, if you thin them way too far out, they'll separate or they'll turn into kind of that webby kind of feel. I am forever going back in here with inflate and just fattening things back up, and also probably cranking the resolution up a bit. So you got this here, you got a neck. So underneath here, you're gonna have your hyoid bone and your esophagus and a whole bunch of stuff in here. And a little bit of fat too, skin and fat. So that'll give you a little bit more of a natural look. It doesn't just go jaw, it goes jaw, and then underneath you're gonna have stuff. Okay, so, and you're also probably wondering why I'm sculpting an orthographic. I get in the habit, and it's going to sound terrible, I get in the habit of sculpting an orthographic because I do a lot of hard edge stuff, and when you're using transpose, transpose lines tend to act a little bit funky when you have perspective turned on, so I'll usually just by default work in orthographic, which probably isn't healthy. So when you're doing characters and stuff, just turn on perspective. That should be on by default. And we'll fill this in. There's some muscles in here too, but I don't really care about those right now. Okay, got a guy going, or a girl at this point, doesn't really matter. And here, we're gonna have some lats. So your lats are gonna be underneath your trapezius and then kind of overlap the bottom of your scapula here. And that's going to go down about the midway point of your body and then tuck right back here onto the back of your sacrum. So something like this.
How do you feel about using base meshes for programs like Make?
As a production artist, and I kind of went over this at the very beginning, as a production artist, I would absolutely start, if you're getting paid by the job, start with it almost done. That's just money in your pocket. If you're getting paid to fill 3 hours on ZBrush, and on talk about, techniques and interesting, techniques to apply to making something, I would do this. This is really more of an exercise for fun and just kind of practicing. I wouldn't, if somebody came to me and said, Mike, I need a character, I would be like, all right, I'm gonna go grab a character I made already and modify it. that's production for you. But again, when I do that a lot, I tend to get really, really bad. I get sloppy. Anatomy is one of those things that I have to do a lot or I forget it. It's not one of those things I do once and remember. I know there's some people like that. I guess Frank Frazetta is one of them. And, those guys that can be like, I need to learn anatomy. And they go into their room and then the next morning they're like, okay, I know anatomy. That's not me. I got to do this stuff all the time to even have like a basic, barely understanding of it, So, got our lats here. And there's going to be like a little sheathy thing here. I'm going to change this to my smooth, stronger again when I reset my brushes. It's going to go like that. You're also, if you do a lot of deadlifts, you're going to have these muscles aren't on top. They actually are covered by the sheath, but you're going to get a little, two little, if you lean forward, you can kind of feel two little bands back there. And if you really work them out hard, you go look at bodybuilding reference, it's going to look like a little Christmas tree through here. But again, that's underneath that sheath there. Then back to your sacrum here. Cool. Oh, and we need to talk about obliques. So our lats, and again, I'm going to be talking about different body types here. So if you're doing like a monster dude, you're going to see these lats kind of poking out from the front. Joe average, and usually females, you don't get a whole lot of lats from the front. What you will get is obliques. So from the lats here, we're going to have obliques that go down around the rib cage here, and then kind of tuck into the front of the pelvis here. And actually your rectus abdominis is actually going to go from your sternum to the front of your pelvis, and then your obliques are going to kind of follow your iliac crest there. On a male, you're going to tend to get your obliques are going to kind of bulge. And a female as well, they'll kind of bulge. But let me see if I can just do this really quick. What's the easiest way? I'm going to do, let's demonstrate here. It'll kind of bulge out like this and then go flatter on a female after you do, and this is just base female type stuff. Once you put on, it goes on the hips are a little bit wider. These obliques are going to tend to kind of smooth out into the gluteus medius, and then around the hips you get kind of that hourglass that's a little bit of smoother transition. Whereas on the male, actually let's do this. Simple brush with an alpha. Whereas on the male, you're going to have the chest, and then it's going to kind of bulge out over the obliques here. And on the female, it'll be a little bit of a smoother transition for the wider hips, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm talking about there. Control N. There we go. Okay, so far so good. Let's finish out the arm. We'll end with the head. What time is it? 9 o'clock. What?
Best way to learn anatomy?
Teach it because it forces you to do it. I honestly don't know. It's been a struggle for me for sure. Teaching it has helped me a lot. I would also say doing it in 3D is a big help. I'm not necessarily saying do it in ZBrush, although if you know ZBrush, it's a really great tool. But getting an armature and some clay and just kind of forcing yourself to think about anatomy in the round as opposed to drawing. I'm not saying don't draw. You should definitely draw. Get anatomy books and draw them. They're very useful to kind of break down how things work. But once you've done that, also go back in if you can and sculpt it in 3D. Because number one, it's fun, and number two, it kind of helps you break down the barriers. And another really good thing for surface anatomy is scan data, which we'll get into later on when we start fleshing this person out. Anyway, so you know what I forgot to do? I'm dumb. I'm going to go over here to my skeleton here, grab it, and I'm going to hold down Control Shift. I'm going to lasso this arm here, Control Shift A, mask, and I'm just masking by tapping over here. So if you go down here to masking, you're going to see a bunch of buttons in here. Most of them can be done just by hotkeys. So if I Control drag over this, oops, and then Control tap, that blurs the mask. If I Control drag over this and then Control Alt tap, that'll sharpen the mask up. It's such a low res, it's kind of hard to tell. If I Control mask and then tap, it'll invert the mask. If I Control drag, it'll clear the mask. So all this stuff, and grow and shrink, you kind of got to go in there and do, but most of them are just through hotkeys. Anyway, Control tap, Control Shift, bring everything back, Control tap again, R to rotate, and I'm just going to rotate these arms out. If you want to, you can kind of drag these transposed lines and then take this outer circle and kind of position them like a bone itself. Then you got a little anchor here and you can kind of just rotate like so. Or if I'm in a hurry, I'll just drop an anchor in there and just go. The reason I'm doing that is, especially if you're going to end up doing cloth sims or putting armor on something, you don't want your arms right down by your side because it's kind of difficult to get things to sim correctly and kind of get armor sculpted in position. So give yourself a little bit of breathing room in here. I guess this is what you call an A pose. A T pose would be something more akin to this. So if riggers, usually the rigs you'll see are sometimes in this position. So it's an A pose. So we'll go with that. I'm going to go back to my person here, and I'm going to do the same thing for my guy. Girl, guy, person. Rotate that out to kind of match. There we go. And of course our deltoid needs to be fixed here. Beautiful. So now that we can kind of see in here, let's talk about armpits. Everybody's favorite. I'm going to move this deltoid up out of the way. So if I go to my skeleton here, you're going to see a little thing that sticks out. I think that's your coracoid process, something like that. You're going to have a muscle that attaches to here. You're actually going to have a few things attached there, but if I go here and go into transparency mode, it's actually going to attach here and then to your humerus. And if you lift up your arm, you're going to have a little string, kind of a little stringy muscle in there. So I'm going to go out of transparency mode, and I'm just going to indicate it in here really quickly. I'll tap here. There we go. Gonna shove that right in there. It'll be like a little, I don't know, armpit muscle. I think it's called the coracobrachialis, if I had to guess. Somewhere in your brachialis and attach the coracoid process. Something like that. Again, all my books are at school, so somebody correct me in the comments. So, okay. Let's flesh out this arm muscle. I'm sometimes inclined just to start sculpting the arm muscle, but it tends to get a little bit sloppy. So what I'm going to do is go to Alt-E-M. And again, this is just a custom insert brush menu. I made a few changes. I got a bunch of cylinders in here. I got a cube in here, and I like this cube better because it's just a simple cube. The BI cube, whoops. The BI cube is polarized and has a subdivision, so sometimes I usually just want a really simple cube, so I just made a custom brush with that. So anyway, let's go ahead and drag out a sphere. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a split hidden on that thing. But again, you could use the split menu in your subtool menu and do it any number of ways. And we'll call this our biceps muscle. And we'll drop that right there in your what is that? Your elbow. Okay, and then over here you're gonna have your brachialis. So, and actually on the back, let's go ahead and do the back first. I'm gonna steal this bicep. One way to do that is just to go down here to duplicate, and then just kind of push this back, and then you can kind of tuck this in. On the bicep, is going to be back here, and it's going to kind of bulge up here, and then it's going to kind of flatten out down here. So if I can control drag, that's going to dynamesh that, and then I can kind of indicate, you know, where that break's going to happen. And then I can go in here with my clay brush and just kind of, there we go. Triceps. Then you get your biceps here. Let's go ahead and dynamesh that. And then in between both of these is going to be the brachialis muscle. So just really quickly, let's go ahead and drop a sphere in here. Flatten it out. Lengthen it up. I'm just going to drop that right in here. Now, actually, I'm not going to flatten it out that much because it does go through, and it kind of goes from here, and you will see it again down here. So that's your brachialis muscle, and that's in between your bicep and your tricep. So if you want big arms, work out your brachialis muscle and your triceps. Your biceps aren't actually that big of a muscle group, surprisingly, so you've been warned. Gonna push those back here. Okay. And pop that up just a little bit. Okay, so we got those going. This can sometimes be a little tricky to start out with. I wonder if I should. Yeah, let's do it. Hold on, just give me just a second. We're gonna hop into Photoshop just real quick. It'll be easier for me to kind of explain because we're only gonna do it in kind of a semi-pronated state, but I'm gonna do supination and pronation really quickly. So I'm going to throw Photoshop up and enter. Let's do new. Okay. So we've already talked about there you go. So we've talked about the scapula here. So the scapula and then the clavicle kind of goes up and around here. And then the scapula, and this is from the front, by the way. So we've got your sternum over here. You've got the spine of the scapula kind of comes up and over. The acromion process kind of meets that clavicle here. And then you've got the head of the humerus. That's going to go down. This scapula actually kind of goes down as far as the sternum over here. So if you do 2 scapulas down, that's going to give you the bottom of your rib cage. And the bottom of your rib cage, if you put your arms down, is kind of where your elbows end up. So you can kind of get the length of your humerus like that. Now again, halfway down is your deltoid. But where we're kind of focusing on is the radius and the ulna. Now the radius is always going to be you got your ulna in the back here, and that's going to go from thick to thin, and that's going to go to supination, your hands forward. That's going to go to your pinky, and actually your arms are going to kind of do this, and the reason they do this is there's a little spool on here that kind of tilts that way, and your ulna kind of grabs on like a little talon onto that spool and kind of forces your arm out. So if you just stand relaxed, you're going to see your humerus, your arms go down, and then they kind of pop away from your body in a relaxed position. This is a little exaggerated. That's why it does that. And then you got your radius always on the outside. And if you're in supination with your palms forward, there's going to be a gap in between. Let me make this a little bit smaller. So there's our ulna. And our radius is going to be here, and there's going to be a gap in between those two. And then you got your wrist and your palm. So your radius is not only always lateral or away from your body, it's also always attached to your thumb. So no matter where your thumb is here, so here's our thumb, here's our palm, here's our pinky. No matter where this radius is, it's always attached to your thumb. Now, if I cross this radius over like this, that's going to go from pronation to supination. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. So we've got the head of the humerus here. We've got the lateral and medial epicondyles of the humerus. You've got the scapula. You've got the clavicle. And you've got your radius here, and you've got your ulna here. The ulna is not going to change. It's going to go thick to thin. It's going to be attached to your pinky. The radius, however, is going to swing across, and it does that in the Ryan Kingsline skeleton. It's going to swing across, and it's going to go from thin to thick. There we go. And then we've got our wrist here. So now that it's swung across, we're going to have a thumb and our pinky. pinkies out here. We'll do a fancy pinky. We got our hand. So all of this is going to drag muscles along with it. So over here we've got our deltoid, we've got our brachialis, we've got our triceps, we've got our biceps, and then we've got our radiobrachialis, and then our flexors and our extensors. It's going to drag our radiobrachialis, which we haven't got to yet, across, and then it's going to have our extensors on the back and our flexors on the bottom, and then our bicep, brachialis, tricep, deltoid. Anyway, it's a little bit easier to show you both of those here than it would be in rotating stuff around in ZBrush. Or maybe not, I don't know. Let's go ahead and close that down. And ZBrush, there we go. So back in ZBrush, like I was saying, we're gonna have a brachioradialis through here. So I think I'm just gonna sculpt this stuff. That's actually gonna tuck back behind your brachialis and then come across here and go to your thumb. That's gonna be one big group, and it's actually, I think, a couple of muscles, but I'm playing fast and loose here. And then on this side is gonna be your flexors. So if you kind of lift, get in the camera here, if you lift your arm up, you're going to see your brachioradialis, and then you're going to have, if you kind of lift your hand, you're going to kind of see these things kind of move. Those are your extensors, you're extending your hand. And if you make a fist, your little Popeye muscles are going to kind of pop out. Those are your flexors. So, I'm going to put those in real quick. And again, you know what? Let's just use the inflate brush. Flexors, extensors, and just like when we get to the legs, there's a kind of a rhythm. There's a deltoid, there's a tricep, and then there's extensors here, and then there's flexors down here. So you're kind of getting, again, just like the body from the side, you're getting that S curve here. And the hands we're going to get to later. So you can see already Dynamesh with fingers has kind of done a crappy job. It hasn't done a crappy job. The resolution we're working at has dictated that they're going to kind of web together. So what I tend to do is I work on my hand a little bit of a higher density here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the hands, like so. Invert my selection by just dragging. I'm going to do a delete hidden geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, reDynamesh, and that'll go ahead and close these holes for me. And I'm going to put a new hand on here. I'm also going to get rid of this thing. It's just going to get in the way. So sorry, skeleton. You are gone. Delete hidden. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some hands on here. If I had to do it from scratch, I'd probably start with Z spheres, but luckily I don't have to. B, I, insert mesh body parts, M, hand. Ta-da, we have a hand. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this thing around. And we're going to start with this thing. And I'm going to keep this separately. I'm going to be working at the body at a certain resolution and at lower resolution because it's just a little bit faster and easier to work with. And the hand I'm going to go ahead and do split off. And we'll just kind of rotate this around. Now he has very small hands. We're going to scale those up. Typically your hand length is, move this up here, from your chin to about your hairline is your hand. I mean, there are some people in my classes where they have tiny hands and it's like from their chin to their eyebrows. If you got huge hands, it's going to go a little bit further, I suppose, but then again, you probably have a big head, so I don't know. Put your hand up next to your head and measure it out if you're making yourself. Or use your best judgment. Now, I do tend to exaggerate hands a bit when I'm doing characters. Just makes them read a little bit better. And I'll go grab the commander. If you go to my ArtStation page, you'll see a guy with a big old gun arm. His anatomy is actually pretty wonky, but I did it for a reason. I was going for that look. He's a very stumpy gentleman. You're going to see as I'm scaling this out, it's going away from the center. Go ahead and turn on LSym. That's local symmetry. And we'll get deeper into that as we progress with armor and stuff that comes into play a little bit bigger. So we've got our hands here. I'm going to go ahead and rotate these around just a bit. And actually, if you go into polyframe here, polyframe button, and if you hover over this, you're going to see the polyframe hotkey is Shift F. If you hold down Control, you're going to see you get a lot more information about that. Just little tips. Speaking of basics of ZBrush, go to my YouTube channel. Go to Pixelogic, of course, but also my YouTube channel. I've got an intro to ZBrush part 1. It's free. It's pretty linear and easy to get through, so if it interests you, by all means do that. Anyway, we have pretty even geometry in here, so it's not a bad mesh to just kind of sculpt on. So instead of dynameshing this, I'm just going to hit Control-D and subdivide this thing up as we go. If we want to, we can go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Close Holes. I got that here as a little button. If you want a neater hole for some reason, you can hover over an edge, go to Close Convex Hole, and you can just kind of cap that like so. Make that one polygroup. There we go. So anyway, we got a nice fancy pair of hands. They're a little too fancy for me. There we go. If you do want to pose these fingers a little bit, let's do that just a tad. They're kind of swaying back, which is okay. I'm going to kind of bend these a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I hit R or rotate, and I control drag. You're going to see it follows my mesh like so. So I can kind of do that if I want. It'll also kind of soften out when I release that. There's a preference you can change, but what's usually easier for me is just to go ahead and mask that, invert it, and then it'll give me a little bit of a sharper mask. And then I can just go through here and kind of rotate this. I'm going to rotate this down, and I'm going to rotate this down a little bit. And the pinky, I'm going to drop that just a tad. And feel free to, and as you sculpt, you can kind of pose the fingers as well. And we'll get into subdivision history, since we'll actually have some on this thing, as opposed to just upping the resolution of our Dynamesh. So we'll hit all the topics. Cool, got a pair of hands. Back to our body here. I guess let's go ahead and put in some legs. So Alt-E-M, sphere, high point split hidden. You can do split mask points. I have a bad habit because in my custom menu I just have high point and split hidden next to each other. I use them separately sometimes, so that's why I have them there. Probably it would behoove me to do a split to unmask points at some point, but Lord knows I'm lazy, so I may never get around to that, but you should. Don't do as I say, not as I do. So this is our gluteus maximus, if you haven't guessed. That's going to kind of wrap around in here. And you're going to have your Alt-E-M sphere, gluteus medius. You're going to have an iliotibial band. You're going to have a, oh boy, my adrenaline's wearing off. My brain's starting to go. Somebody help me out. Pop quiz, hot shots. What is the muscle above your iliotibial band? This thing right here. Oh wait, yeah. Maybe, yeah, that should be it. As you can tell, legs are not my favorite thing to do. And there's a reason for that, is most of the time my character's wearing pants. So I usually do a really quick block in of legs and call it a day. But that's no excuse. I should really, if you got a weak point, just like in working out, if you have weak point training, you need. I think there's something else. I want to say. Maybe I'm crazy. Let me see. Internet. I think it is the Buddius Maximus. Let's see. So we have our gluteus medius, gluteus maximus, and then we have our iliotibial band. And I could have sworn there was something else. There's something else hiding from me. You know what? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it was a fever dream. I was laying in bed taking notes. You know what? Let's get rid of this. Can I? Oh, you know what? What am I doing? Let me drop. I bet Ryan Kingsline already figured it out. Let's grab. Let's see what he has. Let's put him on the spot. So, Those are fat deposits. We have gluteus medius, TFL, iliotibial tract. So iliotibial band, TFL. That one, whatever that thing is. We'll put that on there. Okay. So we got it. And then our band goes all through here. Really quickly, we're going to do some more spheres in here. I'm going to drag this out. So we have some more muscles in here. We're going to do our quads, riceps in here. And that's going to be our rectus femoris, our vastus lateralis, and vastus medialis, I believe. So underneath your rectus femoris is going to be your vastus medialis, and that's going to go from the humerus and through here. Now, here's the thing. So if you ever cross over that midline and stop and then pull back out, they're going to stick together. So be careful. I'm going to pull this back here. And you know what? I should have also spread the legs out a little bit more for the exact same reason I do the arm, is just so for, if we do cloth later on or something like that. And for knee pads and big bulky armor. I'm going to steal this here. And we're going to call this our vastus lateralis. I'm going to rotate this around. And this will be on the outside. So you got the medial inside of your body, lateral outside of the body here. And over both of those is going to be our rectus femoris. So I'm going to, you know what? Let's use our muscle brush. Did we lose it? All right, let me go grab it. Brush. I put it in IMM, all caps, HI. I knew I saved that for a reason. Muscles. There we go. So we can go from here to here. No. Okay, so when it does that, if you go over here to your no. What am I looking for here? Stroke, maybe. Curve snap distance. I'm going to crank that down to 10. It still wants to snap. So when you drag a curve and then you want a curve to snap to it, you can crank your curve snap distance up and it'll connect like so. If you turn that snap distance down, it shouldn't want to connect. But it really seems to want to connect. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we can go from here to here. You can start out smaller. Let's go ahead and tap away from our surface. I'm going to go ahead and do a hide point split hidden. Alt tap that. I'm going to inflate. And there we go. We actually used our muscle brush. And that's going to do a band right over the knee pad there. Something like that. And we can go ahead and dynamesh all those together. And these will be your quadriceps. And in here, this big empty space in here is going to be your adductors. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill that in really quick. And we're just going to use a sphere. Whoops. There we go. Move this back. So those are going to go from here and here, and that's going to kind of fill in these shapes. Now there's a bunch of muscles back here, but let's not worry too much about those. We'll call them the adductor group. Cool. And those are what's going to bring your legs together. Back here, going to have your, well, you're going to have one more muscle through here. Let's go ahead and do that. So brush, muscles. You're going to have a really long muscle. I think it's the longest muscle in your body, called the, boy, I am really getting tired. Sartorius. You got a sartorius muscle here. That's going to go from the inside of your knee all the way up to your iliac crest here. I'm going to go ahead and fatten it up just a little bit. Not a lot. I mean, it's a pretty thin, long muscle. But that's going to kind of divide your adductors from your quadriceps here. And it's also going to have the effect of rounding out the inside of your knee here. So you're going to see, I'll bring this back here. The outside of the knee is actually going to be pretty flat. There's tendons over there. And if you look at somebody from the front or just yourself in the mirror, this will tend to be very round, and then this will be flatter over here. You're going to see your biceps femoris a little bit on the outside, connecting back here. Let's do it. There we go. And if I do, instead of doing a duplicate, I'm just going to hold on Control Shift and drag out a copy here. And we'll do our hamstrings back here. And that'll actually leave a gap. I'm going to kind of smooth these down and then use snake hook to kind of pull these out. So we'll do something like that. There we go. And from the front, you'll see a little bit of that connection, and that'll actually have the effect of straightening out. One thing I forgot to mention is when you have your arms, how I said if you're just standing relaxed, supinated, which means your palms are forward, and it kind of goes, your humerus goes, it goes down and then kind of out at an angle, and kind of a relaxed angle here. So supinated. Once you cross over that radius, it's actually going to have the effect of straightening out your arm. So when you go pronated, your arm from the front view is actually going to look straightened out, whereas if it's supinated, it's going to have a little bit more of a relaxed position. Or you know.
I have a request for internal organs without bilateral symmetry.
Physiology, we're going to get to in my next class after I become a professor. I am superficial, super superficial anatomy guy. That is interesting stuff, though. I remember in high school being Brandon said, "Oh, I totally forgot a muscle group up here too." So if you take the corners of the head straight down, generally speaking, you're going to end up where the nipples are, and you're also going to end up where the iliac crest kind of comes in, kind of swoops down and touches. Those are two important landmarks here. If you take these nipples and kind of go down like this, you're going to get a nice line, and that's going to be your serratus anterior. And your inside of the serratus anterior, your obliques are going to kind of feather in with them. Your serratus anterior are a little bit more straight, like this. They're kind of just this way, and then your oblique kind of tuck up right in there. Sorry I left those out. And in fact, your scapula kind of swims in between your latissimus dorsi and your serratus anterior. Fun fact, I guess. So here, obliques. There we go. Oops. And then, okay, so when we go one head down, two head down is your chest line, three heads down is your navel. And that's also kind of where your hips or your pelvis starts. Four heads down is where your genitals go, so your hips fit right in that box. 5 heads down, 6 heads down is your knee, 7 heads down, 8 heads down. 8 heads down, it kind of gives your characters a heroic kind of proportions, as well as makes it a hell of a lot easier to do head measurements, because everything is divided in half. So that's why I like it. Heroic or not, I'm doing 8 heads. Sorry, everybody. All right. Now you're going to see, this is kind of an emaciated look because we don't have fat deposits yet, so we'll get to that. And really, fat deposits in the surface anatomy is, aside from the shape of the skull and aside from the pelvis, is really what dictates what gender our character is. So I'm going to let you guys decide what you guys want to make first.
You want to vote now?
Vote now. Okay, so we've got our tibia, fibula, and those bones are going to end up actually making up our what are going to be our ankles, and that's going to go around our foot down here. The shin bone plays a very important role. So if you look down, you're going to see that curve. This is a really nice S curve. So you're going to have your sartorius, and you're actually going to have a muscle called the gracilis. It's going to come from here and also down through here. It's going to smooth this inside out, and then it's going to kind of curve and follow. So you can kind of follow this S-curve all the way through here, and that'll be your shin bone. And this is actually going to be very close to the surface. You can reach down and feel it. And then back here is going to be your soleus and your gastrocnemius, your calf muscles, basically. And those are going to tuck up. We're almost done. We're almost done. Let's go ahead and do sphere. These are gonna not quite that high. There we go. Something like this. I'll drag this out. Now we'll kind of put the soleus and the gastrocnemius together. Why not? And let's actually separate those out. Now what you just saw there was a feature of the if you do Control Shift and select lasso and go in here, you can just actually select an edge ring. Super duper useful for things like high-res cloth, seams, hard edge modeling. Not super useful when you're back here trying to select the poly group and you're accidentally doing that. So if you don't want that to happen, go to your select rectangle and then it won't happen anymore. And then we'll go ahead and Dynamesh that. Smooth it out, pull it down. Now you're going to have your calves here and your soleus all in here. And now just like your forearms, you're going to have flexors and extensors. Your extensors for your feet are going to be bundled over here. So when you lift, well, you extend your foot down and you pull them up, you're going to have two groups of muscles. One of them is going to be over here. Kind of fit these in here. There we go. I keep forgetting I have a muscle brush to use. Too used to dropping spheres in there. So you're going to have one group over here. And then these are going to be way bigger than that. All right. We got our soleus and our gastrocnemius here, and then so you're going to see we got again that S curve here. It's going to go long and then straight and then curve, and then it's going to go curve all the way through the inside of the knee and then another curve. And this is going to be higher than this. This is going to be higher than this, and the opposite on your ankles, because if you go to your skeleton here, you're going to see your tibia, your fibula actually goes, it starts kind of underneath the tibia and it actually goes longer. So the tibia ends up down here. So your ankles, it goes this way, and then this way. And that, I think, is enough anatomy for tonight. Minus fat deposits.
Are we voting?
Yeah. We got a consensus yet? I mean, we can do fat deposits for both. So, I mean, let's do it. So, men, and this is like general, regular old Joe Schmo dude.
No, we want female.
Female it is.
Female.
So,
Well, and then one mix.
I mean, yeah, let's do it. So, men, whoa. Come back. All right, hold on. Good news is, occasionally when ZBrush crashes, usually, actually, that brings up a good point. Let's see what we got here. So I'm going to get my comma key. Okay. So go to ZBrush, recovered files, and then grab your recovered tool. And that is not the recovered tool I'm looking for. So I'm going to go back here to my, actually, recovered tool is a sweet sniper rifle I did on my channel. We're going to go to quick save here. And what I usually do when I'm splitting a lot of things off, occasionally ZBrush will hold on to some weird memory. So what I'll do is I'll split something off or split a bunch of things off, and then I'll just hit quick save, and then I'll hit my comma key, and then I'll just double click the last quick save, which is this one, and then I'll kind of reload everything with kind of fresh history on all the objects, and it'll be a little bit less crashy. It doesn't happen often. You know, I've been working all night so far, and it hasn't affected me yet. But if it does, that's just one of the things that might help you out. So just really quickly, let's go ahead and get our calves back. Here, something like this, good enough. And our extensor's back. I'm just going to inflate this up. Good enough. And we were talking about fat deposits. So this main mesh here, guys usually carry their fat deposits right underneath, I guess you call them your love handles, right underneath your iliac crest, or over your iliac crest. Underneath your pec, you're going to build up a little bit. And obviously we have fluctuating weight and genetics and stuff. It's going to have, what? Well, hey, you start with the male fat deposits because there's very few of them, and then when we get to the female, we're going to add more. And what else? Oh, and then the butt. So, guys are pretty simple. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Something like this. There we go. Another thing too that you need to be careful of is when you're doing like your gluteus maximus, your gluteal fold. So for like surface anatomy, you know, you go your forehead's down and you go back here and you put in your gluteus medius. Your gluteal fold. So when you put in your fat deposits, it's going to be lower. Yes, we're going to get to that too. So this will be our, and I wish I have a really good book. It's at school. And they go over all the fat deposits really nice. But I'm going to kind of wing it. We'll see if we get most of them. So on the female, you're going to have a fat deposit called the RM. It goes right here above your sacrum. And you're going to have fat deposits here and also all along the side and on the back of the thigh here. And then here, I'm going to just, I guess we can duplicate that off. Inflate it. So along the side here. And also, you know what? Let's go ahead and dynamesh all this together. So we've got a human going. The calves are kind of wonky because I didn't spend hardly any time with them. I'm going to go to smooth stronger. Let's clean these up just a little bit. Just drop that resolution. There we go. So there's our, there's where our Achilles tendon goes. And then our calves tuck up into here. Oh, and this brings up another one. So there's another fat deposit here at the back of your knee because your muscles are going to connect up in here and then right on the back of the knee here. There's another fat deposit. So that's what's going to give you your hamstring, little bump, and then your calves. And let's go ahead and flesh out this side over here. And then you've got your long curve of your tibia. And then you've got your calf over here, soleus and gastrocnemius. There we go. A little bit better than it was. Something like that. Where else? I'm going to take, so let's say I want to combine all of these different separate things. Well, an easy way to do that is I'm going to take the things I don't want to combine first. I'm going to alt tap these hands, hold down shift, shoot them to the top. I got my skeleton at the top, and everything else is fine to go ahead and merge down. So I'm going to go ahead and select this thing here, and I'm just going to hit my hotkey for merge, which is this button right here. And my hotkey for merge is Alt-E, just like it is in Photoshop. And I'm just going to merge all this stuff down. If it throws an error at us, we'll probably have to either delete hidden mesh. Yeah, one or more subtools is partially hidden. Let's go ahead and just do delete hidden. Nope, not that one. Select this one. Delete hidden. This is under modify geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And then we'll just keep merging these things down like so. So now we have an entirely merged character, and we have a skeleton for a reference to keep us honest, and then we have hands. Cool. So now I can dynamesh all this together, at maybe, let's keep it pretty low, 264-ish. Cool. What was I doing? Oh yeah, fat deposits. So let's pull that up here. There we go. So you're going to have gluteal fat. You're going to have fat on the sides. You're going to have females tend to have more fat on their obliques as well as on the sides of their thighs here. And just a general softness underneath the skin, layers of fat, and kind of just softens out the silhouettes here in the forms. So you're going to see, even by doing that a little bit, already has a more feminine look. I forgot to talk about the patella here. So yeah, we've got the patella. There's going to be a little tendon at the bottom of the patella, and you're also going to have fat pads on either side of the patella. So if we go in here, there's going to be fat pad here, fat pad here. That'll start even looking more like a knee, and then there's the little patella here. And then a little fat here. And then again on the back of the leg here, that was kind of gross. I don't know why that must have undid that sphere, or I placed it very poorly. Alright, so we got the hamstrings, gluteus, and then we have a little fat here, and here. And that'll also kind of give that very feminine look. So on the female here, if we do the male, kind of the typical male, like kind of like we did with the obliques and then the legs and then the belly button. The female will tend to be the obliques out to the hips, and then they'll be a little softer in here, like so. So those two different types. I keep dragging out Nick's. There we go. Nope, that's not mine. This is mine. If these are kind of in your way, you can hit R, and that will stop them from being shown. But every time you hit quick save, it is saving all of this, because basically quick save is doing a file save as, which is saving as the project. If you don't want these anymore, just go to subtool, delete all. Okay. Let's go. Brian King's line. That's me. And this one I don't need anymore. Delete all. And then, okay. So, kind of clear those out. I know the one with 3 is the one I'm working on. Whew. Okay. Oh, oops. Duh. One more. So the breast tissue is going to be, they're not bolted on like this. They're going to be teardrop shape. And if you look down from the top, they're going to go out this direction. They're not going to go straight forward. And they're going to kind of go this away. So there we go. Female extraordinaire. Let's go ahead and dynamesh this together. And we got a female going. Now, how are we doing on time? 10 o'clock. Come on, another hour. Let's have some fun with the head. So 2 things I like to have separate is the hands and the head, because I tend to kind of work at them at different resolutions, and then the body is all one resolution basically. So let's go ahead and chop off the head. Let's take off kind of this area here. That'll work. I'm going to do a split hidden dynamesh. If I tap either of these, it's going to dynamesh and close the holes, which is nice of it. There we go. Oh, one thing I do need to mention. Okay, okay, I'm glad that happened. If it does that, if you go through here, it's basically finding a hole somewhere. If you go through and let's try dropping our resolution. There we go. And now if we raise our resolution, should fix it. Yeah. So it's finding, it was finding a hole somewhere and wanting to do a very thin dynamesh. One thing I need to mention though is, so Tuesday nights I'll be here 8 to 11 my time, so 6 to 9 your time, Pacific time. On the next Tuesday is February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. My heart goes out to all of you. I love you all very much. I'm going to spend Valentine's night with my wife. I'll be streaming that morning from 7 to 9 my time, so 5 to whatever time that is. It'll be posted, so definitely check that out, and I'll post updates on my Facebook and Twitter as well. Okay, so here's our skull here. Another cool thing with starting with this is all of these proportional things are already figured out. If you're not starting out with that, so let's not start out with that. Let's start out with a cube. Make polymesh 3D. Hit X to go across X symmetry. Turn on projectile blur, Dynamesh. Okay, so if we start with a cube, we know that the head, if this is one head length, it's going to be one head length and then like 3/4 of a head width. And then from the side, it's going to be perfectly square. Kind of. We'll get to that in a second. So if we want to, we can go ahead and use clip curve to kind of start shaping our head from the front here. So it'll look, so there's our cranium, and there's our jaw, and let's cut that in a little steeper here. Okay, so a head would look something like this from the side. We'll get to that in a second. So if we start drawing out a head is basically, if you divide a head equally in half, and we'll go ahead and divide this one in half as well. That's your eye line. We'll draw some eyes on here. And then you're going to have a brow line above that. If you take a head in half, and then you go brow line, the chin line, there's your nose line is the middle of those. You divide this into thirds. You're going to have your mouth line. If you take your eyes straight down, you're going to get the corners of your mouth. And if you take this, so here's your lips. If you take this line, it's kind of the underneath your lip, but above your chin, where it gets really close to your bones. That's what that is. If you follow this straight out, that's actually where your jaw line kind of ends up. So anyways, if you're sculpting a head like this, you're doing it very wrong, because you're going to have a really, really flat face, obviously. So really important thing to remember is heads have draft. So when you take a bite out of a sandwich, you're going to have like a rounded shape. If you look at a head from the top, it doesn't look like this. It looks more rounded. So we're going to go ahead and trim these corners off and go ahead and kind of smooth that out a little bit. So we're going to trim this down. We're also going to trim this back. So we're still keeping the overall square, but we're going to go ahead and use trim dynamic to kind of shave away the corners. And if we take, so again, our eye line is still in the middle, but the top of our head is no longer right here. It's like over here somewhere. If we take this eye line straight back, that, remember we were talking when we put the traps on, that occipital protuberance, that's kind of the backest, the rearest part of the head. From here, it's going to start curving inwards. And from the side view of the head, if we have this cut in half and this cut in half, there's our auditory meatus, or where our ear hole ends up. And then in front of this is our jaw. Here's our cranium. So let's go ahead and, again, using clip, and kind of start divvying up this head. Like so. Okay, anyway, so head straight down. We've got our eye line here. Now the eye line, I'm just going to go ahead and start carving that out. And we have a brow above our head. I'm just going to put brow ridges in. Now, again, we don't have very much draft of this face still, so I'm going to just go in here with a move brush and just manually force all this stuff back. Stop doing that. There we go. So now what we're going to have is our chin, and we don't have a mouth yet. We're going to put a big round. Oh, so clipping, clip curve. If I hold on Control Shift and drag out a line, if you hold down, so when you hold down Control Shift, it's automatically, if you don't let your fingers up, it's automatically going to want to snap to 5-degree increments. If you let go of Shift, it's still going to clip, but it's not going to snap to any increments. So that's how you can snap an angle. If you hold down spacebar, you can move it around, just like Photoshop, I believe, when you're using marquee selection. Sorry, my brain's going. So you can use spacebar to kind of move this thing around, and then you can drop it. You can tap Alt once to give you that curved line, or you can hold down Control Shift, use the spacebar, tap Alt twice to give you a straight line, or you can do a mix, tap twice, tap once, tap twice, tap once. And it's basically just taking, see that gradient pointing outwards? It's taking all the polygons that are past that gradient and sucking it straight back to that line there. Now it can do funky things if you were to do something like this. And you're going to see, okay, here's a good one. So if you do something like this, you're like, okay, cool, it pulled the polygons down, it looks great. And then you go to the top here and you're like, oh, I have a really thin mesh here. And if you dynamesh that, it's going to give you a really thin, nasty webbed mesh here. What it's basically doing is taking all these polygons and forcing them straight down. In this case, what I might try and do is something like trim curve. Trim curve basically slices the object, fills the hole so that you don't have that little overlapping section. So if you want to do it manually, it's basically go to slice curve, slice the mesh. You'd hold down Control Shift, isolate that, or Control Shift and isolate this one, and then do a close holes. Oops, no, do a delete hidden, close holes, dynamesh. It's doing all of those steps with just one fell swoop called trim curve. Undo. There we go. Yeah. Caveat with trim curve. We have X turned on, but it only does it on one side. So again, in this case, I got to go to mirror, mirror, and weld to get the symmetry back. Clip, however, does a great job. There's another couple caveats, which we'll get to when we start doing hard edge stuff. We'll get there. So anyways, we've got our cranium here. We got the ball of our mouse is going to be very rounded, and then this is actually going to go back. And we also need cheekbones in here. So I'm going to go in here with my clay brush, and we'll pop in some cheekbones in our zygomatic arch. So, and our nasal cavity here. So you kind of start seeing a head starting to come out. And so we started pulling this back to give us draft. So we go from the brow to the side, and when we have eyelids in here, it's going to step back to an eyelid, step back to the lower eyelid, step back to the cheekbone here, like so. So as long as you're getting that step back look, you're in good shape. So we got some good draft going, and we got some clay brush here. So yeah, I've got these kind of clay brushed out, and then got our zygomatic arch, which just kind of goes this way, and it's actually going to have a hole in here. So depending on what book you read, the temporalis bone is the widest part of the head. Sometimes it's the zygomatic arch. I think it's the zygomatic arch generally. Kind of round this out here. Something like this. Now, I'm going to kind of squeeze in this head just a tad. And then we've got our teeth in here. Now we've got our jaw. And again, if we take this line over, that's usually where the jaw starts to curve. And then down here. So this was just if you were starting from just nothing, you can use all those things you learned when you were drawing and just apply them directly to what you're sculpting. No problem. And this is actually going to come out further here. So the caveat with that square from the side thing, that's going to be from this point to this point. Everything past that point isn't really included in that, and that includes your chin and your nose. And then this probably curves underneath a little bit. But since we have our head already kind of blocked out for us because we started with this mesh here, let's go ahead and put that back. Let's sculpt some heads. So we get the clay brush here. I'm going to kind of at least cover this. So we've already got the draft, we've got the round mouth here. Go ahead and fill this in. We've got our masseter here, and we've got an ear here. So ears, we can either just like mask. Now ears are also going to be kind of tilted. They're going to go from your brow to the bottom of your nose, so something like this. So you can kind of mask that. And then just start making ears. You've also got our trusty BI insert mesh body parts ear. Drop that in there. Rotate it around. And this ear's a little bit soft. I'm going to make a few quick changes. One, I'm gonna I'm going to Alt or just Control Tap to invert that. I'm going to push that back in there. And then for this ear, I'm going to pull this out just a tad. Put that little helix in there. And this is going to come out, and then this is going to tuck in here. And if you have ears you've already sculpted, make your own insert mesh brush, or start with a base head. If you're doing likenesses, you can start with almost any nice base mesh and make any head out of that. You would be surprised the range a good solid base mesh will give you in your sculpting heads. But we're starting from scratch. So we got this kind of dug in here. There we go. Just a few minor changes to that ear. Pull that out, pull that in. There we go. Cool. So then control drag again. And if you need to do, if you still need to make changes, you can always, you know, mask and move that stuff in. So our nose here. Let's go ahead and pull this out. So again, brow to the chin, halfway down is the nose. We'll kind of start blocking that nose in. Now for, you know what? Let's start with the guy, and then we'll change it into a female. We'll do a whole bunch of different things. Whatever we can fit into the last hour here. So we've got our nose going. Our mouth is going to be, you know, 1/3, 1/3. So somewhere in here. That's where our mouth's gonna go. And maybe not tonight, but certainly eventually we'll use Dynamesh to put a mouth bag in here once we start getting to like refining our meshes and putting teeth and tongue in there. Z-Remesh does a great job at giving you sculptable, almost, I mean, you can get away with even animatable meshes with Z-Remesh on the head. I'm always pleasantly surprised. Of course, if you want to change some of the mesh, we'll get into that too. With Z sphere topology. We're going to kind of flesh this out here. You got your labial folds on the sides of the nose, like so, something like that. Clay brush. I'm working at 320 resolution. So Dynamesh also has, it depends on what scale you're working at. So if I take this head and I duplicate it off and I go down here to deformation size and scale it up and then Dynamesh that, I'm still working at 320 resolution. However, because she's so much bigger, if I go in here and I'm like, pretty nice. If I do the same thing over here, kind of not as nice. It's a lot lower resolution. So just the scale also affects resolution as well. So something you kind of have to dial in. If you Google Dynamesh Master, that should take you to a ZBrush Central thread. Joseph Drust, I believe, pretty sure. Joseph Drust made a Dynamesh Master where you can actually type in exactly the resolution that you want. Super useful tool. So check that out. And let's do a mirror and weld. There we go. What I'll do is if I want a higher resolution mesh, I'll crank up the resolution. Usually what I'll do, as long as I'm not doing, I'll get it to a point with my Dynamesh where it's pretty detailed, and as long as I'm not doing like crazy stuff like this, I'll go ahead and just do a Z-Remesh and then start like doing a super nice refined pass. So, you know, once I get this thing sculpted out with eyelids and mouth bag and all that good stuff, I'll just Z-Remesh, project all that detail, and then start sculpting my fine details. The only caveat to doing that is if you decide at the end of the day, like, oh, you know what, I wish she had this going on, that's a little bit more difficult. You can do it with freezing transformations and stuff, but usually I'll lock down my mesh while I'm in Dynamesh and then Z-Remesh and start detailing it out. Oh yeah, so we're doing a guy here. Go ahead and here, and then he's gonna have nice high cheekbones, I suppose. And then the mouth is still gonna wrap around that skull. It's going to have nice draft. It's going to kind of have a fold here, and at the corner of the mouth there's going to be a bunch of muscles kind of collect there. You're going to have your lip here, kind of dig that out. Go in here with our clay brush here. And your lower lip's going to kind of insert into your upper lip here. And if you want to, always be working in the round, always be kind of dropping back here and making sure, using your move brush and standard brush, whatever brushes you'd like, and kind of making adjustments as needed. Get your philtrum here, nostrils here. So we'll kind of go through, I think I got enough time to kind of go through a couple heads here. So we'll talk a little bit more about resolution and kind of dialing in details and stuff. So we got that going, we got this, we've got, this is a little bit much maybe, dig that in and then smooth it out. So there's the bottom of the lip. And then here's the chin, do a big Gaston, who's the coach for the Texans. Got that big dimple right in the middle of your chin. You can stick your pinky in there. Put one of those in there if you want, or if not, don't. There we go. I'm gonna fill this stuff out a bit. So now with the eyeballs, let's go ahead and drop some spheres in there. We've been doing that all night. Dropping spheres. Gonna rotate this and move it back into place. And the reason I'm doing that is it's going to kind of keep me honest with my eyelids. It gives me something round to work with. Now instead of subdividing this, I'm going to hit D to give me subdivision preview to kind of smooth it out. If that's under geometry dynamic subdiv. So if I hit D, shift D, exits out of that. When we get into hard edge modeling and Z modeling, we'll be doing that a lot. But it's useful here too. There we go. So we use our clay brush here. We'll kind of build this up. There we go. We can start getting some eyelids going. Now this bone right here, the orbit, is actually going to come down here. So your brow is going to go up this way. And then you're going to have an orbit. And then you're going to have your eyelids kind of through here. And then you're going to have eye bags and stuff. So, and again, just like the mouth, your eye is going to go around your eyeball, like so. I'm just going to dig those back. Now, yeah, this isn't going to be the best mesh for sculpting just yet. We're kind of getting this stuff kind of worked in with Dynamesh, and then if you did want to go through here, the Z-Remesher, and kind of outline the eyeballs, which we'll get to later on, and kind of move this stuff around as needed. That in, and then we'll get the Damien standard back out. Cut that in. You can also mask this stuff and pull that stuff down if you want to. Oh yeah, turn on perspective. I'm used to working in orthographic because of my hard edge needs. And really, like I said, I don't do that much organic modeling. So I am going to do more organic modeling on this channel and on my own channel than I normally do. So just to kind of itch that scratch, I think. But we'll do hard edge stuff too. It's fun. And depending on the month, I may or may not use a lot of ZBrush. So I might be a little rusty when I show up, but bear with me. And I would also like to use my channel. You know, I'm going to be doing kind of different stuff on this channel and my channel, obviously. But I want them to supplement each other. So I'm going to be very, obviously, ZBrush oriented while I'm on this channel. On my channel, I'm going to be dipping into a lot of different things. But what I'm hoping is when I do that, like if we do a character, and I'm going to sculpt cloth, but if I want to, on my channel, I'll go into Marvelous Designer and do stuff. But I am going to bring that back into ZBrush, possibly on this channel, and explain a bunch of different ways to kind of make your kind of clean up your Marvelous Designer meshes in a way that's good for production and easier for you to use, because ZRemesher is awesome at that, and Projectile is amazing. So ZBrush has a ton of really good tools for kind of that type of workflow. So ZBrush oriented and also supplementary, I hope. Okay, so let's give this guy a little personality here. Kind of a friendly dude. So let's go ahead and chisel him out a little bit maybe. So we'll give him some pretty serious eye bags here. And you're gonna notice a lot of times what ZBrush is really good at is, I mean, not really good at it, but what's really easy to do, and you're gonna see why, is because it's a lot of standard in Claybrush, is kind of old things. So you can kind of, a lot of old men end up on ZBrush because it's so fun to detail them out and they're so interesting. A lot of interesting things to go on. But there's a real appreciation for stylized meshes too that that you can get into. Females and stylized females are really fun to do. Stylized meshes like toy stuff is really, cartoony stuff is really fun to do. One thing with this guy is he has a very round, domey head. Guys tend to have their craniums kind of slope back just a tad. So that's a little bit more. So super masculine. It's big super masculine dude. So we're gonna go here, give him a big brow ridge here, and then build this up. He's got a big Roman nose, and you'll notice when ZBrush crashed, I got rid of the alpha. I probably would have done that by now. I don't need that anymore. I can kind of just turn that alpha off. Are you on? Are you on this? Yeah. Okay. Did I miss any questions? I kind of caught some, but
I'm going through. I think you're fine.
okay.
What alpha number do you use for your clay buildup brush?
The clay buildup. I'll just use the default. When I was doing my clay buildup with the clay brush, I was using alpha 06, I believe. Just kind of something a little soften it up a little bit.
How do you typically texture your ZBrush sculpts? Any specific program?
Yeah, ZBrush. I'll poly paint. So when I'm doing something from like that has a lot of like polarized pictures of textures, I'll use ZBrush and Spotlight, which we'll get into, to project the details onto my mesh, and then I'll bake those off for my diffuse map. There's a couple other programs I've used too. That's my fastest, easiest way, honestly. If you go to my channel and look at the Commander, I do, and I'll cover this stuff when I'm on my channel. I'll do a lot of Painter. That's my normal workflow now. But really, you can accomplish quite a bit in ZBrush with poly paint. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that skeleton real quick. Fill this in. And you're seeing as I dynamesh, I'm kind of losing a little bit of resolution. I'm going to crank it up just a tiny bit. And I'm going to use Damien Standard. Instead of digging in with the Damien Standard, I'm going to hold down Alt and kind of pull out. And kind of start flattening these. There's not a whole lot of resolution here for me to mess with. use pinch. We can kind of pinch his lips together a little bit. And that's really good for doing just kind of small thinning adjustments. Even if you wanted to pinch his entire front of his face, you know, or his nose here, it's a really good way to do that. Eyes, brows, ears. So if we want to, we can. We'll leave his ears alone because I am going to turn this into a female. So I don't want it to go too crazy, but we can start making major adjustments to the face here. So we can start making these a little less prominent. You can drop his chin back. Here you can take his nose way out. You can take his brows down, and just very quickly. And you know, if you like this head as a start, you can duplicate it off, keep it around, or you can just take this undo slider and just drag it on back.
Is there any particular technique when you move stuff around with the move brush to prevent the deformation unwanted flattening?
Unwanted flattening, like if I move something out, not really. I can mask and move stuff, or if I want to move stuff out to a point, and this is more of a hard edge thing, I'll use move acu. Basically all that is move with a curve, acu curve turned on. So if I do move brush, it's going to kind of, oops. If I do just regular old move brush, it's going to be kind of a nice soft transition. If I want to do a hard transition, I'll do acu curve, like so. So if you want to say have square ears, have acu curve turned on, and you just pull those up like a box, like so, that kind of thing. Snake hook is another one. In fact, I know some people who use snake hook instead of move. It gives you a little bit more leeway as far as like you're able to kind of move and also pull in directions. So that's another good one. I'll fill this in a bit.
Do you usually draw some concept before sculpting, or do you just improvise with ZBrush?
Kind of depends on what I'm working on. On my channel, I'll probably be drawing concepts a little bit more, just because it's fun. And again, it's just like if I'm going to show up, I'm probably gonna do stuff I don't get to do at work. So I'll definitely do some concepting. Usually it'll end up being weapon concepting or robot concepting. It won't necessarily be head concepting, just because you see how easy it is to make a head, and in ZBrush, for me, it's actually easier to make a head in ZBrush than it is to like draw a bunch of different heads in different angles. I should be better at it, but my crutch is 3D. So, you know, if I need to see a head at three-quarter, I've got it. If I need to see it straight on, I've got it. And also it allows me to kind of work in the round. So if I do make a change, just in general, of my object, I know, oh, you know what? I kind of want it wider, but I also want it wider through here too. So I'm automatically making micro automatic adjustments in the round as I work, just really quickly. So I'm not as fast as that. I know some people are in Photoshop. That's certainly not me. Plus it's kind of funner for me to kind of do that stuff in ZBrush. I'm gonna fold this under. So anyway, let me pull this way back, stretch this up. We'll kind of widen this out. We'll mask these ears. Now again, we have L sim turned on, so when we scale the ears, it's going to be over the local symmetry. And we can go ahead and rotate these out. So what's another face? And kind of start refining these nostrils a little bit more, no matter what character we're trying to make. Dig these out. So
listen to music when you sculpt?
No. When I'm in a hurry, I'll put on Master of Puppets and just play that on a loop until I go crazy. Not really. Usually I'll listen to audiobooks. For a long time I watched a lot of TV, but it was always TV I'd seen before. I've seen Sopranos all the way through like 6 times. Star Trek: The Next Generation, maybe 10 times all the way through. Book for I'll get back to you on the Fat Pad one. It's a really good book. It's like got a lot of 3D models in it. I apologize. I don't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. I like this guy. So yeah, the lips are going to have 3 lobes. 1 here, here, and here. And then 2 lobes on the bottom lip here. And then you're going to have a little bit of build up here. Something like that. Now, let's say we want to turn this handsome gentleman into a female. So let's bring back our skull here. And we'll kind of push this back out into position here. Get back in this little layer. So, males tend to have the heavy brow, a little heavier jaw, heavier chin. Females are going to have, and again, I'm speaking in such generalities when I say this. I feel kind of bad saying it because there's so many different people and they're all so interesting. And different, but when I'm talking about like females will have this, I don't mean every female on the planet. I mean in general, they tend towards this. So yeah, you could have a female with really big ears like this guy, but I'm gonna go ahead and shrink those back down. So again, brow to nose, and I'm gonna rotate those back in. Something like that. And then, yeah, they're going to have a little softer. They're not going to have super heavy brows. They're still going to have an orbit that kind of comes in here. Still have a mouth. Crazy, I know. And then their noses, maybe a little smaller. Not all of them. I mean, some will have big noses. I'm going to go, again, atypical, or just typical here. Let's go ahead and bring this way in. Oh, I still have vacuum turned on. Let's turn that off. Pull that in. All right. We're back to a base-ish shape here. Smooth this down, redynamesh. Go back in with our clay brush here. Start building this out again. And little nostrils, filter them. Then our mouth here. Again, softer chin. softer jaw. And you'll probably notice most of my sculpting is just standard brush, clay brush, move brush. 99% of it, and you would be surprised how far that gets me. I'm also going to lessen these brows quite a bit and also bring her cranium back up. So again, the hairline is going to be about 3/4 down. And it looks like her face is getting kind of squished towards the front there. So let's bring back my skeleton here. Get reoriented. Something like that. Dig this out, dig this out. I'll make those cheekbones a little more prominent. Now, if I were making like a cartoony face, if you go to my ArtStation page, if you go to the Age of Booty section, you'll see a lot of pirates. I think one of the pirates I did was in the Dynamesh demo for Pixelogic I did forever ago. I'd probably start with more primitives and just get very, very basic shapes. I probably wouldn't sculpt like this, and we'll definitely do some cartoonier, more stylized stuff later on because it's fun to do. Why not? Brow here, it's gonna be something like this, and then this will dip back down. The orbit comes kind of down here, and then we'll dig in this side, and we'll put in the upper eyelid here, the lower eyelid here. I'm still going to soften this up quite a bit, and that jawline quite a bit, and that chin quite a bit. There we go. A little better. Now, depending on what type of face you want to do, age versus weight and just general ethnicity and genetics, all that stuff plays a part. So I guess my best advice for that stuff would be get a lot of reference, which I should be doing right now, but I'm not. I'm just kind of winging it. But it's definitely useful, especially if you're going for a likeness, obviously. But even just in general, just to kind of look at stuff. And I love if you're doing I love looking at the traditional sculptor guys, Jordi Shell and Ray Villafane, Tony Cipriano, and God, there's so many. I feel bad leaving names out. A lot of really good ones. Those are really, really. I love looking at their stuff. Even if I'm not sculpting anything or I'm using their stuff directly, I'll just have something of theirs up, just because it's so fun to look at. All right, a little more feminine, and as we move forward, I'll have my own input as to like what kind of character I want to make, but I'm gonna probably send it out to you guys as well if you're interested, and we can kind of dictate what kind of character we want to make, what kind of things we want to see on it. I tend to get kind of stuck in a rut because I don't really design a lot of characters. I like to, but that's not really my job a lot of the time, so we can design it together. And another thing I like to do, I don't know if we can do it on this channel or if I should just do it on mine. I'll talk to Pixelogic guys. I'm trying to figure out a way, because what I do, I teach at CG Master Academy, a ZBrush course, and I teach at Gemini, and I like taking student work and just kind of riffing on it, kind of taking their sculpts and just kind of taking it, pushing it around, pulling it, making minor changes, and kind of developing their idea. I find it really, really refreshing because more often, I mean, every time I've done that, the idea is there. You can see the passion there. You can see the energy there. I just need a little refinement. So it's really, I mean, and for me, I mean, I'm passionate and energetic. Is the next guy, I suppose. But maybe not as much as somebody who's just starting out. So that's a pretty refreshing for me to take their work and just kind of do a sculpt over and kind of have fun with it with them. But it's kind of difficult to do in this kind of format. It's be like, well, does somebody show up and I pick somebody, and then but they gotta upload it and I need the file, and the file can't be too big, you know, so now I gotta have a document about how to keep your file sizes down, and it's like, oh boy, I don't know how to figure that out. But somebody figures out a good way to do that, I would totally be down for that, because like I said, that is really, really fun for me to do, and it's usually fun for the other person. I hope they act like it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's really painful.
Any recommendations on to make hair?
Oh, tons. Don't do it. It's tedious. Depends on what kind of hair you want to make. If you want to make cinematic hair, you can use fiber mesh. If you want to do sculptural hair, we can cover that a bit as we move forward. In fact, we definitely will. Still has a very manly-esque feel about her. We can, I mean, I personally use other tools, other programs. Well, I mean, for hair cards, you can do it in here too. There's a lot of stuff you can do in ZBrush. We'll cover them. Remind me. Actually, when we get to hair, we'll definitely do that. We'll do sculptural hair, and then we'll make like hair cards. In fact, if I go to my brush menu here, I probably do have some. The hair card is so easy to make. You can drag out your own hair. You can use insert mesh brushes and ZRemesh to make really complex hair, and then you can throw that into other programs which will actually convert your hair strips to curves. So then you can do really cinematic hair based on hair like, let me see if I have something here. Oops, sorry. Yeah, let me do here. Yeah, so for example, here's a hair, here's a hair strip. You know, you can just drag out hair strips and make the hair sizes bigger or smaller and move them around as needed. Another thing you can do is we'll go here, grab like one of these. This was from the Insert Multi-Mesh repository on ZBrush Central, so definitely check that out. You can do this type of hair, like this. We'll do a quick hide point split hidden. And in fact, if we take that, now that's a character. Done, ship it. That's an action figure. So if you take this hair here, and you can go over here to geometry, the remesher. Let's take adaptive size down to 0 and polygon target the same. And you can actually go through here and rebuild this. Look how beautiful that is. That is a beautiful strand of hair. So you can actually take these strips. You can, isolate these as strips. Or you can even go in here and just do something like that. And then these strips you can use to control curves. So you can make incredibly detailed hair like this, cinematic style, just by converting these to hair strips, which control curves, which make it, super duper like braided cinematic. It takes you 5 seconds to do. Or you can turn those into more hair cards. But it's a lot of proprietary software and plugins, so that I don't do in ZBrush, the conversion stuff, but I mean, you could definitely, I guess we don't need that head anymore. You can definitely do this kind of stuff for sure.
What do you do with hair makeup now?
Do what?
When you do hair makeup.
Okay, I will. There we go. Delete that. Delete hidden skeleton. And I'll move the eyeballs back into place here since I've been jostling this poor lady's head around. Alt, tap, alt, tap. There we go. Again, having the eyeballs in there again just keeps me honest, keeps my eyelids round.
Do you sculpt every day for practice?
I should. I don't. That would be a really good idea. I should probably start. There's oh, here's a good one. So say you're sculpting along. I'll get back to that in a second. Say you're sculpting along and your mesh starts doing this. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Go down here. You probably accidentally, just like I did, accidentally hit D, which turns on dynamic. So hit Shift D. I'll turn that off, and then you're back to normal. Yeah, I should definitely sculpt every day. And hopefully by doing this Twitch streaming, it's forcing me to like show up and do stuff that I normally wouldn't do, which is kind of scary on one hand because I don't do it that often. Like if you go to my ArtStation page, I do one character a year, kind of, I do 0 anatomy sculpts some years, and that's terrible. I should be way better than that. But it's the truth. So again, like doing this kind of sculpting here, I never do this stuff. Rarely. Doing like the Halo armor that's on my ArtStation. I did that a long time ago. That mech helmet I did like 5 years ago. It's like ancient history. The commander I did for Substance Days for something to work on. And then the FPS female I did for my GDC presentation, which is, you should check that out. It's on YouTube. I think GameSpot live streamed it. GDC 2015. Wow, stop doing that. So if we wanted to do different kind of girl, just like the guy, you can do all sorts of stuff. I think you know what? On my YouTube channel, there's my intro to ZBrush. The very last thing I do in that series is sculpt a bunch of heads just like this. So I guess I did do a little bit of sculpting. Of course, that was a long time ago as well.
Another request for environmental props and creature sculpts.
Yeah, creature sculpts we're definitely going to get to. Environmental props we're definitely going to get to. And really, when we start arting this thing out, this character, there is no difference between doing a knee pad and doing a knee pad shaped cryo chamber. You know what I mean? It's all the same techniques. If you can do character armor, you can do environmental props and vice versa. But yeah, on my channel, I'm going to be doing a lot of weapons and robots while in conjunction with this thing, and then I'll probably go back and forth a bit. We'll do the same thing here. We'll pick it all up, but yeah. Also, organic environment modeling is really fun. We'll grab some Z-spheres and we'll do some of that stuff. And I might take a break. Like if I'm not feeling a character one day, we'll do something else. I'm easy. I'm here to have fun. If I'm not having fun, I assume you guys aren't having fun. And if I'm not having fun, I got better things to do with my time. So let's keep it fun. And this is fun. So just showing up and doing stuff is fun. So I want to keep it entertaining for you guys, since, you know, I don't want you to be bored watching me. And there are some things that I get bored doing, and so yeah, I don't know how to combat that. I might just do it off the channel, or you guys are going to have to be really entertaining for me. And I'm going to fill her out just a bit. Like so, something like that. Let's see, let's take these eyes up just a little bit here. If we wanted to, I don't know if I should bring in, if we want to do a quick, let me grab something real quick. What? Here I'm just going to do ZBrush. We'll keep it pixelogic centric for sure. On my channel, we're going to do it all. There's going to be a ton of stuff going on over there. But while I'm here, I'm going to stay in ZBrush. And don't worry, we're going to get a lot of stuff done in ZBrush. I mean, the R8 movie I saw looked pretty cool. So anytime ZBrush comes out with something, it's, even if it's something where I watch it and I'm like, huh, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Give it like 3 months and it'll be the one thing that I can't live without. They have an uncanny way to create something that I didn't know I needed every release. Let's see, rearrange tone tools and move them down on the list. So that's so subtool arrangements. This is a pretty simple one. If we grab, for example, the eyes, I'll select the eyes, and really I don't spend any time over here naming things. If I need to grab a couple of things, like you know, the hands, I'll just alt tap them. So I'm just, all my subtools are selectable in the viewport. If I have the hands here and I want to merge them with the eyeballs, I'll hold down shift. And let's say the hands are at the bottom. I'll tap the hand, alt tap the hands, hold down shift, shoot it to the top, hold down shift and shoot the bent up arrow. That'll shoot it all the way to the top. Alt tap the eyeball, hold down shift, shoot it to the top. And then I'll use my hotkey for merge down, and that'll just merge the top two subtools. When we get to hard edge modeling and stuff, I'm going to be doing a lot of that. There's going to be 80, 90 subtools over here, and we're going to be juggling a lot of them in organization and stuff like that. But really, you know, and let's say I want to work on the eyeballs and the hands by themselves, and you know, they're two separate subtools. If I go into solo here, I can't do it. I'll just basically, you know, again, let's say they're mixed up here. The hands are here and the hands are here and the eyeballs are here. I'll go, okay, I want to work on the hands and the eyeballs. So the hands are selected, and hold down shift, pop them to the top, tap the eyeballs, pop them to the top. I'm going to touch the eyeball here while it's selected. That's going to turn all my subtools off. I'm going to touch the nameplate. It's going to turn that subtool on, or it's already on because it's selected, but it's going to turn the eyeball on. And then I'm going to touch the eyeball for the hand. And now I'm just working on the eyeballs and the hands. So just a really quick, easy way. You can turn all the subtools on by touching the eyeball off. If the model's selected and the eyeball is off, if you turn it on, it'll turn on all the subtools. If you turn it off, it'll turn them all off. You touch the nameplate and select it, you can turn them on, you can turn the eyeballs on. I think that part is in the intro to ZBrush part 1. It might be part 2. I have free videos for part 2 and part 3 on my YouTube channel as well. Subtool organization might be part of that. It's basically how to kind of wrangle and do visibility on subtools, and shooting them around and selecting them, because you're right, I've had models with 200, 300 subtools. Actually, hold on just a second. Let's go to my what am I looking for here? Where's he at? He might not be in here. That's okay. We'll do her. Actually, she's not that many. She's like an 11. So this one I split up by material ID. So anything that's kind of grouped together are kind of different materials. Let me delete all those. If I go to, there he is, ZBrush. Open this one. So this guy, if you go to I have a Sketchfab page as well. I have all these models on Sketchfab. You can kind of look at them in 3D. Actually, the GDC female you can download from Substance Share, and the mech helmet you can download from the Dedo website. So this guy is 197 subtools here. Here's his body. So, a little bit of an, he's got really, really big hands. Really, really stocky build. Obviously he's missing some pieces here. So let's say I want to look at all the fleshy bits of him. So what I'm going to do is shoot that to the top. I'm going to pop these things. I'm going to hide them. I'm going to click through here. I'll just alt tapping, and I'm going to hide them by touching their nameplate. I'm going to alt tap his teeth, shoot that to the top, alt tap his gums, shoot that to the top. I'm going to keep hiding some stuff here. Looks like that's all I got, those fleshy part. Let's go ahead and grab his eyeballs. Pop that to the top. And he has fingernails as well. And I'm on a laptop, and actually not a very new laptop anymore. This thing's actually getting a little long in the tooth, and this has a mobile graphics card and an i7 that's about 4 years old. But ZBrush still runs pretty good, as you can see, and I'm streaming and all that good stuff. Did I grab the gums? I think I did. Yeah. So now that I know all of these things at the top are his fleshy parts, I'm going to turn off the eyeball. I'm going to select these, turn off the eyeball, turn everything off, touch the nameplate, and then just tap these. And then here's all his fleshy parts. I can turn everything back on. And let's say, you know what? I want the fleshy parts, but I also want one of the things that's in here. He has, get rid of that thing here. He also has some staples in his body. I'm going to shoot those to the top. And let's get rid of that bar here. He has some bolts in his body. He has some clips in his body. And he also has this little metal thing that attaches his big iron arm to. So now that I've shot all those to the top, I can just go ahead and show all these things. And now he's got all his filler. Looks like I missed one thing in here. It is this piece. Nope. It is that one. Go digging through here. A little filler. Oh, I do have it selected. So you hover over there. There it is. Okay, so all these pieces. There's a little. He's got kind of a Frankenstein-y filler piece in there. There's all his fleshy bits. He's got this arm skin. It's kind of, he had it amputated, and there's some skin in here. He's got some bolts and some screws, and he's got this little metal piece that attaches that huge metal arm to him. So I imagine there's some metal inside his body as well as that big shoulder sheath he had. So all these things are kind of together, and I can kind of work on them separately. And then I can bring everything back like so. So anyway, long story long. That would be this guy. Now, sometimes I'll be working on the weapon by itself. I have a weapon file, and then I have a body file as well. These things, I realized I have, I got KeyShot Pro, and that program is so cool to use. A lot of cool things. We'll do a lot of KeyShot Pro on this channel as well. As far as rendering this guy out, I put those planes in there for lighting, and then I realized I could actually just put those in there using KeyShot primitives. Anyway, that guy. Delete all those, clear some memory here, and we're back. So eventually that lady will be something like that guy. We'll deck it out and make it cool. Yeah. Something like that. So now if I am working on the head separately, I did work on Doom a while back. Oh, I have some fan art on my Sketchfab page if you want to check that out. I have a little cyber demon. But he's a really old one. Oh my god, I modeled that thing forever ago. But yeah, check that out. But yeah, I'll keep the head separately, and I'll work on that at different resolutions. And I can kind of just tuck that in. I'm not overly concerned about like, oh, there's a seam through here. I can that I can fix later. I'm just kind of doing blockouts and stuff in here right now. So we'll kind of go through here, and I'm not going to get too far into surface anatomy here. We'll probably call it a night. Any off the wall requests? We can do some last minute weirdo stuff. Doesn't have to be anatomy or character related, it can be anything. If I do anything fast, it's because I was very slow for a very long time. I'm also super impatient, which is why ZBrush is a great program for impatient people like me. Like, I am constantly, and I also, the same reason I use Smooth Stronger, I like to attack my mesh, especially when I'm concepting, just to kind of get in there and get stuff done and figured out and worked around. I enjoy working fast, and ZBrush is a great program for doing that, for sure.
For dancing, free topology, creating a shoulder plate. Besides sculpting when you use ZBrush.
I'm not the dancer in the family. That would be my wife. She's the entertainer. So I'll study up. Maybe I'll do some dancing in later streams. Shoulder plate. Let's do a quick shoulder plate. So let's go ahead and say, I mean, there's a million different ways to do a shoulder plate. Let's just do a real quick one here. I'm going to hit Control Alt, and we'll do a shape like this. I'm going to duplicate her off, and then hit Control W, isolate that, delete hidden. I'm going to very quickly, actually have a macro in here that'll polish my polygroup borders. If you don't have that, you could go down here to masking, mask by border, invert that mask, go in here to polish by features, which is underneath. Custom menus are great. Polish by features, open circle, and that'll kind of polish your border out there. You know, and that kind of gives you a shape. This shape isn't really shoulder pad-ish, but what you can do is you can also do polish by feature just to kind of get a nice round shape like that. And then what you can do is go in here with, if you're so inclined, Z-remesher. And you can Z-remesh that. Let's go depth and size down to 0. And we'll just Z-remesh the shape. And then we'll do half. There you go. Just get a nice base shape to kind of start working on. Like so. Then go through here. Pull it out. Okay, so we got kind of a shoulder pad in here. Now we got to decide what kind of, where does the shoulder pad attach to? So let's go ahead and give the shoulder pad some thickness. We'll do Q mesh all polygons, kind of pull that in. Now you're going to see it's flipped through here. You're going to want to go to deformation or display property. Don't turn on double, just hit flip. That'll flip those around. And then if you hit D, that's going to do that dynamic preview. If you crease polygroup, and that's going to be under your crease menu, geometry, crease somewhere in there. It'll go ahead and crease polygroups here. And then you can hit Shift D to get rid of that. We want to flare out the bottom here. I'm going to go into solo mode, grab the pink mask, pull that out a little bit. And we can actually just go in here with our move brush probably. And we'll kind of flare that bottom out. Up. And again, this is like if you wanted to do like a tactical knee pad type shoulder pad, not necessarily like a dragon skull shoulder pad, but so we'll basically just get our shape in there like so. And then we'll do another crease by polygroup. There we go. And then we can kind of even these out. You can also try, I probably should have done this, is Z-remeshed even lower. When I'm doing kind of base meshes like this, I like to work super low. Once you get that, that's something cool we can do. We can grab, let's grab this top piece here. Let's do some panel loops and then we'll frame that. So let's do, oh boy, it's been a while. It's the best way to do this. Let's isolate that, flip that in there. I'm going to go ahead and do a stroke curve functions. We're going to frame that border, and we're going to go to BC curve tube, and I'm going to tap that border here. And we're just going to kind of frame that mesh like that. There we go, to hide point split hidden. To get kind of a border going on here. Now on this piece here, I'm going to isolate this, and I'm just going to do some quick slicing. So I'm going to go slice curve, and I'm just going to go like this. Slice, slice, oops, slice. There we go. So now with that, I need to, slice doesn't go across x-axis, so I gotta go mirror, mirror, and weld. And then here, I'm going to do panel loops, I think. Let's go ahead and isolate these here. It's actually been a while since I've done panel loops. On the if you go to the Pixelogic Learning page, I did the panel loops video. This is the bad thing about not doing things all the time, is I will forget more stuff than you would believe. But I think I remember. So we'll go to edge loop, panel loops here. Let's do we'll do polish. Some thickness here, double off, and we'll panel loops that, and we'll just do a quick polish. No, smooth. We just want a regular polish. Let's do. What am I looking for? Deformations, and there's a polish in here. There we go. Oops. I'm gonna hit D. And we'll kind of force that back down into there.
Would you dynamesh back any reason at this point, or stick what you have in place?
At this point, you know, when we get into the hard edge stuff, I will be retopologizing and then dynameshing again, just because I like staying concept-y. At this point, what I'm probably going to do is just keep it. So let's say we've got these kind of shoulder pads here, and we want to sell like maybe they're kind of leathery. So what I'm going to do is hit Control D. Oops. Let's go see what we got going on here. Geometry. Undo, undo. Unmask. Let's do I'm going to turn off Dynamesh so I don't accidentally Dynamesh. We're going to do turn off dynamic. We'll hit Control D. Control D. There we go. So we got subdivision history. Then we just go in here with the standard brush. I'm going to turn on lazy radius. And as really quickly, we can kind of start selling this as a kind of a leathery thing. These will kind of be my secondary wrinkles. Then we'll go back through with some micro wrinkles maybe.
What's the easiest way to isolate polygroups? Just a couple polygroups, we have several of those.
So this one has a lot of polygroups. So if I want to isolate a couple, just going through and inverting like so. Panel loops leaves me, well, if I was doing double, it would have left me a whole inside mesh. Let's go drop down lower here. So let's see. Easiest way to isolate, Control Shift click, just a couple polygroups when you have several dozens. Yeah, that's how I would do it. It's just like, okay, I want all the top pieces, invert. There you go. And then here we could do, let's go up. Let's do, I'm going to temporarily delete lower. I'm going to go to stroke. I'm going to frame the mesh again. BC clay curve tubes. Actually, we're going to have to do BC curve multi-tubes. There we go. And then I'll make those a little bigger. We'll tap. Yeah, that's fine. Tap away. Hide point split hidden. And now, because I deleted lower, I don't have subdivision history anymore, but I can reconstruct, get them back, no big deal. There we go. And we got some of that stuff here. And then we'll hit Control D one more time. And we'll kind of maybe sculpt in some. Now this kind of stuff here, when we get into cloth detailing, I'm not the best at it. That's usually when I hand it off to people that are better at that than I am. But we'll talk about a couple different things. One thing we can do real quick. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Plane 3D, edit, make polymesh 3D. I want less geometry, reconstruct, drop that down. Let's go ahead and kill all that. Delete hidden. We're going to divide this thing up. Oops, delete higher, delete hidden. And then turn on smooth modifier, divide that up. And then we're going to go here. One more time. So if we want to make like a rolling fabric pinchy kind of brush is what we're going to make now. We'll kind of go through here and we'll just do this. Smooth that out a little bit. And then I'm going to go, actually let's make this a little bit thinner. A little more contrast. There we go. So let's say we want to make this into a brush. I'm going to go to drop that, go out of edit mode, go here to MRGBZ grabber. I'm going to grab the height of this thing. I'm going to hold down Alt, kind of move this thing around. I'm going to stay away from the edges just because I want to grab a pretty nice height. So go ahead and grab the height information. We don't need the texture. If I go to my brushes here, we're going to go to, let's say, stitches. I'm going to steal some of these properties. So we'll go to stitch, and then we've got an alpha. So if I go back to my character here, hold on, what just happened? Did I miss something here? Let's do a quick save. Actually, hold on. Save as. Let's load that back up. Oh, damn it. Of course, we're going to have to recreate that thing. Actually, let's see what's in the quick save folder. That's still weird. Let's see. Bring it back, bring it back. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. Let me see. Colorize off. It looks like I have a flat color material assigned, but it's weird. Okay, so while I have this, I'm actually going to save this tool out as well. No biggie. And we'll do a preferences initialize, and then load. Yeah, it's still busted. Let's load them back up fresh. Probably something I should do, get in the habit of doing anyway, is just after working for a while, save out a Z tool and then load it back up maybe. Oh boy, it is buried in there. Hold on. Let's do fill. Is this thing gonna make me export it out as an OBJ? You know what? I will fight it. I will do just that. Do all sorts of stuff today. Okay. I will force it. Really did a number to my tool. I'll have to track that down. I don't know what I fat fingered over here. But no biggie. Got an OBJ here. And then if I want to, I can go to subtool, split to similar parts. And then I'll go ahead and split them out into little separate subtools here. And then was that it? Where was I? Where was I? Yeah. Geometry. Smooth, divide. W. Okay. Try this again. Wrinkles. Lazy mouse on. Up a little bit. It'll be totally worth it, guys. I swear. No, it actually won't. It'll be pretty lame. It'll just be some wrinkles. Need to move my keyboard. It's really having a... There we go. All right. We got our wrinkles back. Now let's see if we can't do this again. Drop it. Grab this thing. I've done this before, I think. I don't think I'm doing anything weird. Okay, don't need the texture. Alpha's captured. New document. Grab our person here. Go back to our pads that we're working on here. And then I'm going to grab the brush. Stitch brush. And the other reason I'm grabbing the stitch brush is it has the roll feature turned on. So basically you can just drag an alpha across like that. If you go to stroke, lazy mouse, no, modifiers, you're going to see roll turned on, and you can change the roll distance to what you want. So I'm going to plug in this alpha here. And then I can just go along and kind of, now you can play, we'll play it when we get into hard edge stuff. We'll do a lot of modification for like finding the right mid value for these brushes here. This one's a little bit weird because it's kind of flat. So what I'm going to do is just crank that focal shift down. So now what you can do is just kind of roll that alpha along here and just kind of get that kind of puckering on the sides. Super easy, super fast. Makes you look like you spent a lot of time, when in reality, you get to go home early. Hey, take a long lunch. Everybody thinks you're awesome. And it'll be your and my secret. Now, if you like that brush, again, we'll do a sphere here. And then we'll divide it up. Ooh, maybe not that much. F. Now we'll take our brush here and there we go. We can kind of do this. Say you want to use this again, and we'll do brush, alt, tap, select icon, save as, and just because we'll throw it into our Z brushes. What am I looking for here? Let's throw it into, I have a cloth folder yet. Baby clothing. Sure. We'll call that Lil Wrinkles. That'll be our Lil Wrinkles brush. We'll use it to detail out Lil shoulder pads. What are you doing on time? 11:04. 4 minutes over. Sorry, guys. Z-Modeler does not come with ZBrush Core. Thanks so much for showing up, guys. We're going to I'll be back here every Tuesday night, except for Valentine's Day. I'll be Tuesday morning. And if ZBrush has me, or if Picologic has me back, I think it's a trial run, so assuming they want me to keep coming back, I'll keep coming back every Tuesday. See you guys, and bring your opinions on what you want me to make. And I'm going to sign out. Catch y'all on the flip side, all right?